After 15 years of dedication, I resigned, causing chaos in the company and financial trouble because my father favored my younger brother over me. Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let us keep this channel growing together. Thank you very much. Now, let's begin the video. Hello Reddit, long-time lurker and first-time poster. I had to get this off my chest before I lost my sanity. If you don't want to read my son's tale, you can find the TLDR at the bottom. So I'm a 34-year-old male who has been working for my father's plumbing firm, Taylor & Sons Plumbing, for 15 years. The son section is supposed to be about me and my younger brother, Matt, 31M. But it's more like Taylor and his favorite son, and the other one who does all of the work. My father founded this company around 30 years ago. A classic small business story. We started with just him and a van, and now have 15 plumbers, 3 office workers, and are one of the larger plumbing companies in our community. And I'm not being arrogant when I suggest that most of that growth occurred after I joined. After high school, I attended college to study business management for 4 years, earning an official degree. Meanwhile, my brother Matt barely graduated high school and required 6 years to complete a 2-year degree at a community college. While I was studying, he was uploading gym selfies and making his way around the local bar scene. After graduation, I returned home to work for my family's business. Dad emphasized the need of learning from the ground up, so I spent 3 years as a plumber's assistant, unclogging toilets, crawling beneath houses, and dealing with others' physical. Fine, whatever. I got it. Can't manage plumbers if you don't know what they do. I worked my way up, obtained my master plumber's license, which is a massive pain in the ass, BTW, and learned scheduling, inventory, and all the boring but essential stuff that keeps a business running. I worked 60-hour weeks for years, missed my friends' weddings due to emergency calls, and did not date for around 5 years. Who has time? Then I finally made it. I became operations manager about 5 years ago. I began implementing all of the systems I had been planning. Digital scheduling, better inventory management, follow-up calls, following jobs. Our reviews went from 3.5 to 4.8 stars. Revenue increased by 40% in 2 years. Dad genuinely appeared impressed for once. Then Matt shows up. Enter Matt. Until now, my brother had been bouncing between bartending and finding himself. Suddenly, he decides he wants to join the family business. Keep in mind that this guy has never exhibited any interest in plumbing. I can't tell the difference between PVC and copper pipe. I think a P-trap is something you use to catch animals. But Dad is absolutely thrilled. His golden boy has finally joined the family legacy, and this is where everything goes to hell. Dad offers Matt a made-up title like Director of Client Relations and a salary that is 80% of mine, despite the fact that I've been there a decade longer. Matt is assigned an office with a window. Meanwhile, I am still in the converted closet, adjacent to the restroom. What's his job? Taking clients to lunch. We're posting on our social media, occasionally showing up at project sites to photograph our plumbers working, always making sure to include himself in the shot as if he's overseeing. He arrives around 10 a.m., has 2-hour lunch breaks, and departs at 4 p.m. due to traffic. Every staff meeting, Dad compliments Matt on bringing in some minor contract, while completely disregarding the fact that I recently optimized our whole billing system and saved us $50 per year. It's as if I'm invisible. There was one instance when I spent weeks putting together a bid for this massive commercial project, the largest contract we'd ever pursued. I'm talking about binder-thick proposals. I even pulled an all-nighter to finish it. On the day of the meeting, Dad brings Matt along. Matt had not read a single page of the proposal. Matt, who was hungover, kept racing to the bathroom. Matt, who described the client's building as that big place with a sign throughout the meeting. We received the deal anyway since my figures were good. On the drive back, Dad couldn't stop gushing about Matt's connection with their team and how his people skills sealed the deal. My contribution? Dad commented that my attention to detail was beneficial, as if I were the freaking office assistant. Moms know better when I try to talk to her about it. She gives me a sad expression and says things like, "You and your brother are just different kinds of people. Not everyone can be as organized as you are," as if competence were a character fault. The final straw. One day, I overheard Dad speaking with Matt in his office. The door wasn't completely closed. Dad was talking about succession planning. When you take over the company, and asked Matt if he wanted to learn about the finances. My name did not come up. Not even once. Not even maybe your brother can help you with the accounting or something. The company I helped establish. The company I've dedicated my entire adult life to. And I am not even considered a prospective future owner. Just the workhorse who keeps things going while Matt takes the spotlight. Keeping my head down. I kept my head down and finished the work. It was not like I could do something about it. Then, around 9 months ago, our administrative assistant quit. She had been with us for 5 years, but received a better offer elsewhere. Dad said we needed to hire someone with more office management experience because we were expanding. Enter Julie, 29 Fahrenheit. Something resonated with me the moment she walked through the door for her interview. She walked with confidence. Her dark hair was always in a perfect bun. and her emerald eyes seemed to see right through all the bogus corporate BS. She wasn't one of Matt's typical Instagram model types, but she was stunning in a refined, put-together sense. Her resume? Impressive as hell. Business degree. Experience managing offices for firms far larger than ours. There are numerous accounting software and business operation certifications available. Dad was so thrilled that he hired her on the spot. Something he never does. Julie changes everything. How about her first week? She thoroughly restructured our filing system, which hadn't been updated since the 1990s. Is this her second week? She discovered $20,000 in unpaid invoices from the previous year and collected it. Is this her third week? She confronted my father about our antiquated scheduling system and persuaded him to invest in the software I had been yearning for years. I was essentially in love. We started having lunch together in the break room. We initially discussed only work-related topics. Then we realized we both enjoyed the same true crime podcasts. Then I discovered she enjoys hiking, which I do as well. Then there were movies, novels, and all that. It was so simple to chat to her, unlike those awful Tinder dates where you're trying to think of anything to say. Asking her out after a few months of the lunch thing, I finally got the nerve to ask her out. For real. Dinner on Friday night, at that new Thai restaurant downtown. Not the break room, with our sad Tupperware meals. She agreed right away, smiling in a way that made me feel like I wasn't simply the family doormat. We scheduled it for the following Friday. I was ridiculously excited. I even caught myself whistling while fixing a sink on one job site, which completely confused the apprentice working with me. I did not inform anyone at work about our date arrangements. My family has a specific gift for spoiling anything nice that occurs to me, so I decided to remain silent until things got serious. A big mistake, the gut punch. 2 days before our date, I was returning from work when I heard Julie giggling in the hallway. That genuine chuckle was something I had worked hard for weeks to obtain, but she was not laughing at what I said. She was chuckling about something Matt said. As I approached the corner, I noticed them standing far too close together at the coffee machine. Matt was performing his famous lean against the wall. Look how cool I am posture. He was showing her something on his phone, and she was genuinely interested in whatever rubbish he was spewing. Hey, Ryan, Matt said as he noticed me, using that false brotherly tone he saves for when other people are present. Just showing Julie those kayaking pics from last weekend. Kayaking. Matthew. The guy who complains about having to walk from his automobile to a restaurant while it's raining. The guy who once asked me if the river near our house included those fish things. Since when does he frickin' kayak? Julie smiled at me, but it was not the same grin. It was simply polite, professional. The kind you give to a coworker, not the person you're about to go on a date with. My stomach sank. They're amazing photos, Julie replied, returning her gaze to Matt. I've always wanted to try kayaking, but never had the chance. You should come with me sometime, Matt added, flashing that idiotic smile that always works on ladies. I go most weekends when the weather's good. Very peaceful out on the water. Let me tell you, this guy has never kayaked in his life. The closest he's been to a water sport is drinking beer on someone else's boat. But suddenly, Mr. Outdoorsy appeared. That would be fantastic, Julie stated. And she really meant it. I could tell. She turned to face me. Ryan, I didn't know your brother was so into outdoor activities. Neither did I mumbled. But they were quickly back to scanning through his phone, which I'm sure featured stock shots of boats or images he found online. The next day, Julie found me alone in the break room. My heart skipped a beat as I wondered if the Matt encounter was all for nothing. About Friday, she said, and I knew exactly what was coming. I'm really sorry, but I need to reschedule. Something came up. Something came up is the worldwide code for I found a better offer. And in this case, my brother undoubtedly made the superior deal. No problem, I replied, attempting to sound nonchalant. Maybe another time. Definitely, she said with a smile. A smile that did not reach her eyes. A smile that conveys, this is never happening? Sure enough, I found out later through an office rumor that Julie and Matt had their first date on Friday. The same day, she was supposed to go out with me. At the Thai restaurant where I had planned to take her. The next week was torture. Matt strutted around the office as if he had won the lottery. Julie flushed every time he passed past her desk. When I entered the room, the whispered talks halted. Matt casually mentioned their date during the staff meeting. I felt like garbage. Every time I try to construct something for myself, Matt swoops in and takes over as if it was never mine in the first place. And of course, things got worse. Matt tells Mom everything, so she knew about it right away. She called over the weekend, all thrilled. Have you met this Julie that Matthew is seeing? He says she's just wonderful, so accomplished and pretty. She works at your office. She's our office manager, I replied bluntly. Well, isn't that nice? Matthew says she's very smart. Organized, too. Sounds like she and Matthew have so much in common. They share nothing in common, except for maybe living on the same planet. But sure, Mom. They are soulmates. Finally, I snapped. Actually, Mom, Julie and I were supposed to go out first. I asked her out, and she said yes. But then, Matt swooped in. There was a prolonged pause. I could almost hear Mom trying to assimilate this information in a way that would not make her beloved. Matthew appeared terrible. Well, sweetie, you know how these things go. Sometimes people just connect. Matthew has always been so charming with the ladies. You're more, well, focused on work. Seriously, not everyone appreciates that like they should. She basically said, Matt's hot and fun. You're boring. Deal with it. The new power couple. And that's how it began. Matt and Julie, Taylor and Sons Plumbing's new power couple. However, the saddest aspect was not even losing Julie. It was seeing her gradually comprehend who Matt truly was, and pretending not to notice it. The cracks began to show. He canceled arrangements with her for the first time, because his friends invited him to a last-minute poker game. The day she overheard him exaggerating, or outright lying, about his function in the company to a client. She once had to cover for him when he was due to attend a networking event, but was too inebriated to show up. I could see the perplexity on her face. The mental gymnastics, as she attempted to reconcile the Matt she thought she was dating with the real Matt. However, by that time, they had become official. And she was in too deep. My family circles the wagons. Mom invited Julie to Sunday supper 3 weeks after they began dating. It'll be nice to have a fresh face, she exclaimed, as if our monthly family dinners weren't already agonizing enough, especially since my work infatuation had picked my brother over me. I almost skipped dinner, but Dad made it clear that it was not optional. Family dinner is family dinner, Ryan. Be there. The dinner from hell. So I went. And it was just the nightmare you'd imagine. Mom went all out, using her best china, and preparing a sumptuous roast. Dad told work stories that made Matt sound like a business prodigy. Matt performed his ideal son-boyfriend routine, pulling Julie's chair out, refilling her water glass, telling utterly fabricated stories about his wild weekends and charitable work. Julie ate it all up, laughing at Matt's jokes, questioning him about his fictitious hiking expeditions. While I sat there, knowing that Matt's closest experience with outdoor adventure is when he had to park at the far end of the mall parking lot, I attempted to join the conversation. I described the hiking trail Julie and I had discussed over our break room lunches, just to let him know what he ruined. Oh, Matt was just telling me about that place. Julie cried, turning to him with excitement. You've been there too? Been there? Matt asked, laughing. I practically live on that trail in the summer. Sure, he is suddenly Bear Grylls. The promotion I deserved. That supper happened 6 months ago. They have been formally dating ever since. Anyway, I focused on myself and tried to adjust, praying that things would improve for me. I persuaded myself I didn't really care about what slipped through my fingers. I knew fantastic things would happen. About a month after that dinner, I was ultimately promoted to senior operations manager. After 15 years of killing myself for this company, this was meant to be a big deal. Increased responsibility, better pay, most importantly, the company's car. Nothing fancy, just a new Ford F-250, with ample towing capacity for transporting equipment to job sites. The announcement that almost was worth it. Dad made a major announcement during our monthly staff meeting. After years of dedicated service, Ryan is being promoted to senior operations manager. This comes with a nice raise in the new company truck we just purchased. Well deserved, son. For once, I felt as if my effort was being recognized. I even allowed myself to get enthusiastic about having a great vehicle for the first time in my life, instead of my rusted-out Chevy, which is held together with duct tape and prayers. And then came Sunday dinner. Fast forward to Sunday dinner. Mom's preparing her renowned pot roast. Dad's talking about a client. Matt has his arm around Julie, as usual. I'm just hoping to get through the lunch without saying anything I'll regret. Then Dad clears his throat and sets down his fork. I've got an announcement to make, says the man. I immediately tighten up, because in my family, announcements are never good news. Matt and Julie share this glance, and I know what's next. The bombshell, we're engaged, Julie announces, holding out her left hand. With this huge diamond ring, which likely cost more than my annual income. Mom breaks into joyous tears. Dad begins clapping Matt on the back. I'm sitting there in shock. The fork had frozen halfway to my mouth. This is wonderful news, Dad exclaims. My boy's finally settling down, starting a family. Then he drops the actual bomb. The ultimate betrayal. Matt, I think you and your future bride could use that new truck more than the company could. Consider it an engagement. Consider it an engagement present. You'll need a good family vehicle now. Matt makes a phony, astonished face, as if this hadn't been his goal all along. Wow, Dad, that's so generous. I've finally discovered my voice. Dad, that truck is supposed to be part of my promotion package. I need it for work, for actual company business. Dad waved his hand dismissively. Now, Ryan, don't be selfish. Your brother's starting a family. Family comes first. You can keep using your old truck for now. It still runs, doesn't it? Barely, I said. But no one was listening. They were all busy praising the happy couple, discussing wedding plans and future grandchildren. The final straw. That was it? The last straw? The moment I realized I was done with this family business garbage forever, rage was building up. I was fuming. But nevertheless, I was able to drive home in my piece of junk truck. That decided to create a worrisome rattling noise the entire journey, simply to emphasize the fact that it was on its last legs. Perfect timing. 15 years down the drain, I arrived home and totally lost it. 15 years. 15 years of dedication, hard work, and sacrifice. 15 years of seeing Matt glide through life on charm and Dad's affection, while I developed something worthwhile. Something profitable. Something that was reportedly just turned over, again, to my brother. And now, Julie. The only wonderful thing that had happened to me in years was presented to Matt on a silver platter, complete with an engagement ring and a company truck. I don't think I've ever been so angry in my life. It wasn't even hot or explosive. It was this cold, controlled wrath that suddenly made everything crystal apparent. I was never going to be valued by this family. I was never going to receive what I deserved. I was merely the workhorse, the dependable one they could dump on, while Golden Boy received all the glory. The email that changed everything. I grabbed my laptop and checked my email. I looked at the blank compose window for around 10 seconds. Then I started typing. Subject: my resignation. Dad, I am quitting from Taylor & Sons Plumbing, effective immediately. Consider this my 2-week notice. Though realistically, you'll be lucky if I make it through the week. I plan to pursue other options. Sincerely, not really, Ryan Taylor. I pushed send before I could back out. Then I sent a separate email to our HR person, who is essentially the bookkeeper who handles payroll, about my accumulated vacation time. I advised them that I would start taking it immediately. I had no intention of returning to the office. The fallout begins. Within minutes, my phone began to blow up. Dad is phoning. Matt texted only AF and stupid emoticons. Mom left sobbing voicemails about how I was tearing the family apart and being overly dramatic. Then Julie called. I let that call go to voicemail. Ryan, it's Julie. Your dad told me you quit. What's going on? Please call me back. As if she didn't know. As if she hadn't been a part of the entire disaster. I disregarded them all. I turned off the phone and began updating my resume. I was finished. I'm done being the family's workhorse. I'm tired of watching Matt get everything he wants while I labor myself to death for scraps of attention. The confrontation dad arrived at my apartment the next morning at 7 a.m. He pounded on the door as if he were attempting to break it down. What the hell, Ryan? He yelled when I finally opened it, still in my pajamas and unprepared for this showdown. Quitting over email? After everything this family has done for you? I honestly laughed at his face. Done for me? You mean like paying me less than the market wage for 15 years, while Matt receives bonuses simply for showing up to work? Or how about offering me a business vehicle as part of my promotion, and then giving it to Matt as an engagement present? The excuses? That's different, Dad said, his face flushing. Matt's starting a family. He needs our support. And I don't? I've been supporting this entire family for years. Who do you think keeps the business going while Matt is away enjoying 2-hour lunches and posting on Instagram? Dad's face became even redder. Do not talk about your brother in that way. Matt brings in clients. He is the company's face. And I'm what? What about the workhorse? The sucker who actually performs the work, while Matt takes all the credit? I am done, Dad. Let Matt manage your business. You don't need me anyway. The final goodbye. I started to close the door, but Dad's foot got in the way. Classic. You walk away from this company. You walk away from this family, he told me. It was all very dramatic, as if we were watching a horrible television program. I looked him dead in the eyes. If this is how family treats each other, maybe it's for the best, I replied, pushing the door so firmly that Dad had to shift his foot. He pounded and yelled for a bit before giving up and leaving. The aftermath begins. The next day, Matt arrived. I didn't even open the door, but yelled through it that he needed to go before I called the cops. He attempted the come on, bro, don't be like that thing, but I wasn't buying it. Mom called repeatedly, crying about how I was breaking your father's heart and tearing the family apart. As if I were the problem here. As if the 15 years of favoritism and disdain were my fault. But, you know what? I've never felt more free in my life. A new beginning. The job search was shockingly easy. That first week, I got 3 interviews, all with larger and more professional organizations than my father's. Both of them made offers. I accepted the position with Wilson Plumbing and Heating, a competitor across town. They're tiny but developing quickly. And the owner, Dave Wilson, values experience and hard effort. Isn't this a novel concept? What is the best part? They offered me a partnership track in writing. After 2 years, I'll have the chance to buy in and become a part owner. Despite 15 years of service, my father never considered gifting me this. Oh, and they gave me a business truck. A brand new Ford 350 Super Duty. Better than what Dad took from me. Fully loaded with the firm logo on the side and everything. During my first week, I made sure to drive past my parents' house. Petty? Yeah. Satisfying? Of course. Watching Taylor and Sons fall apart. Meanwhile, the Taylor and Sons enterprise crumbled without me. I've been receiving texts from some of the plumbers who were truly nice guys, and their stories are better than any revenge fantasy I could have imagined. Week 1. Dad attempts to take over. Dad tried to handle operations on his own while I was gone. He hasn't done the job in 15 years. He had no idea how my scheduling system operated. He ended up scheduling 3 distinct crews on the same day. Then there was no one available for an emergency call at the hospital. That's a large account that I've personally managed for years. They were not pleased. Week 2, Matt gets promoted. Dad delegated responsibility for operations to Matt since he was in over his head. Matthew. He can't even remember to arrange his own dental appointments. Predictably, it was a complete disaster. According to my friend Steve, one of the senior plumbers, Matt, arrived late every day. He spent most of his time on the phone with Julie or his friends. Couldn't answer simple job-specific questions. They lost one of our second-largest commercial contracts entirely because Matt failed to submit the renewal papers. The account was worth $50,000 each year. Gone. Matt was too busy posting gym selfies or whatever it is he does all day. The dominoes keep falling. The scheduling is so disorganized that they have had to call clients the night before to reschedule. This is infuriating everyone. Their online ratings have plummeted from 4.8 to 3.2 stars in only 3 weeks. Dad is blaming the new system. My system. Not the fools attempting to run it. The office chaos. One of the office employees resigned because Matt continued to blame her for his failures. Accounts receivable are stacking up because no one is invoicing on time. That was another thing I managed that no one seemed to know about. But I didn't expect, did Dad have to take out a short-term loan to cover payroll? Because their cash flow is all messed up. 3 weeks ago, the business was solidly profitable, is currently struggling to stay afloat. And Julie? Apparently, she stays up late every night to keep things functioning. But she is an office manager, not an operations professional. She can arrange files and answer phones all day, but she knows nothing about schedule plumbing jobs. Managing a group of 15 plumbers, handling various talents and certifications. She didn't realize what she was getting into with my family. Have you made your bed? Lie in it. The Taylor family breaks apart. Mom has been messaging me nonstop. Increasingly desperate messages. Your father's working 16-hour days trying to sort out the schedule. Matt's really trying, but he doesn't understand your system. We had to tell 3 clients we can't get to them this week. Notice that none of these messages contain an actual apology or an admission that they messed up. Classic Taylor family. Dad's breaking point. Dad left me only one message, slurring his words as if he had been drinking. This business was okay prior to your sophisticated systems, and it will be fine afterwards. You think you're irreplaceable? No one is. Yes, Dad. Keep reminding yourself of this while your business rings the drain. Matt's panic mode. Matt's messages have progressed from phony brotherly concern. Hey bro, everyone's worried about you. A barely veiled panic. Do you still have the login for the scheduling software? Dad can't find it. To outright desperation. Seriously, dude, just tell me how you handled the Henderson specs. Their project manager is freaking out. Julie's half-hearted attempt. Am I the only one who hasn't reached out much? Julie. She sent one email to my personal account about a week after my departure. It was lengthy and full of apologies about how she never meant to hurt me and how things with Matt just happened. And, of course, she hoped we might remain friends. Finally, almost as an afterthought, if you have time, could you possibly write up how you handled the scheduling? We're having some issues. I removed it without replying. Not my circus. Not my monkeys. Oh, and the truck. Apparently, it's creating an odd sound. Matt had the audacity to ask if I could look at it, according to his most recent text message. The truck that should have been mine. The truck was part of my promotion but was given to him as an engagement present. I laughed out and then deleted it without answering. Not my truck. Not my problem. A new life at Wilson. Meanwhile, I've been at Wilson for 2 weeks now, and it feels like I've entered a parallel dimension where competence is truly respected. Dave asks for my thoughts on operations. My ideas are executed rather than disregarded. The employees appreciate me for my experience, not because I am the boss's son. Yesterday, I fully revamped their service call routing system. Dave was so amazed that he offered me a bonus on the spot. A bonus for executing my job well. What a concept. And then I met Kate. About a week after starting my new job, I met someone. Kate. She's an architect I met on the job site while we were working on the plumbing for a new office building. Smart. Funny. Director. Not playing any games. Kate is nothing like Julie. Kate is real, whereas Julie was always polished and proper. She comes up to dates wearing jeans and boots. She can talk athletics as readily as she talks design and calls me out on my nonsense in the most refreshing way. She doesn't engage in games. She doesn't say what I want to hear. Kate delivers exactly what she promises. Our third date. For our third date, we went hiking to a waterfall I'd wanted to see for years. Just two folks that genuinely enjoy each other's company. I showed her some urgent texts from my relatives. She simply shook her head. They had gold and treated it like dirt. Their loss. My gain. Then she kissed me, and I completely forgot about the family business for the rest of the day. Perhaps for months. A chance encounter. This weekend, Kate and I were at the hardware store, purchasing supplies for my bathroom project, when I noticed them. Matt and Julia. Great. Just as I was enjoying a normal Saturday with my girlfriend. Kate clasped my hand when Julie saw us and yelled out. Matt turned around, appearing as if he'd rather be somewhere else. Hey bro. I kept it brief. Hey. Julie's gaze immediately focused on Kate, then on our linked hands. How have you been? Good. Really good? This is Kate. I introduced them as Julie sized her up. Kate, the absolute champion, grinned and shook their hands. Want nice to meet you both. I've heard a lot about you. Matt's panicked expression. Priceless? The truck problem. Julie inquired about our supplies. Renovating Ryan's bathroom, Kate explained. I'm an architect, handling the design. An architect? That's impressive, Julie exclaimed, suddenly self-conscious. She's an office manager at my family's company, I told her. Why not slightly twist the knife? It turns out they were there because of the truck. You know, the one that kept making strange noises. And of course, Matt had no idea how to fix it. I couldn't resist. The company truck. The one that was supposed to be mine. Matt had the decency to appear embarrassed. Yeah, that one. He had no regrets about what he'd done. Julie's apology. Kind of. Kate. Ever the pro. Expertly devised an exit route, including some fictitious dinner appointments. Julie hesitated as we turned to leave. Can I have a moment alone? Kate questioned me, but I nodded. She gripped my hand before moving away. Julie moaned, appearing tireder than I had ever seen her. Taking it slow? Translation. Matt's true colors were showing. The business? Not the same without you. Apparently, they had hired 2 individuals to replace me, but they were still lagging behind. Matt, different since you left. Yeah. Working for the first time in his life will accomplish this. She shifted uneasily and tucked her hair behind her ear. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for coming between you and your brother. I nearly laughed. Not in a harsh way, but rather in a wow, you really didn't get it since. You, Julie, were not the problem. You were simply a symptom of a much larger problem. My family has never valued me. What about the truck? That was just the last straw. She chewed her lip and glanced at Kate. She seems nice. You two look good together. We are, I said without hesitation. She sees me for who I am. Julie nodded as if she understood, but I wasn't convinced she really did. In any case, I was not going to remain around to explain. Mom's final attempt on the way home. My phone rang. Mom, I'm not sure why I answered. She sounded surprised when I picked up, but she recovered fast, jumping right into the guilt trip. They miss me. The business is floundering. Matt is overwhelmed. Sunday dinners aren't complete without me. I let her babble while waiting for the inevitable request. You should come by soon. Maybe we can figure things out. I'm busy every Sunday for the foreseeable future, I told her, maintaining my voice level. Kate smirked as she overheard from the driver's seat. Want me to say I told you so? Or would you prefer to just bask in the schadenfreude? Definitely basking, I replied, smirking. No going back later that night, as we lay twisted on the couch, watching some bizarre true crime documentary. Kate looked at me. Would you ever consider going back to the family business? I didn't even need to think about it. Not even for a second. She grinned, delighted with the response. I'm not sure what will happen with Taylor and Sons Plumbing. Perhaps they can figure it out. Perhaps they will crash and burn. Either way, not my problem. What do I know? Sometimes the best thing you can do is move away from individuals who don't appreciate you, even if they are family. Especially if they are family. It took me 15 years and a company truck to learn this lesson. Better late than never. My mom sold my stuff and pawned my laptop. I called the cops, had her arrested, and filed a restraining order. Christmas dinner was almost finished when my father put down his fork, looked me directly in the eye, and said, "You are a burden, and you can no longer live with us." At first, I assumed I had misheard him. My mother let out a strange, nervous laugh, as if she wasn't convinced he was serious. But then he simply sat there, staring at me, waiting for a reaction. The room went silent. My younger sister Lily froze with her fork halfway into her mouth. She glanced at me with wide eyes, as if she couldn't believe what she'd just heard. I swallowed the slice of ham I was chewing and set my fork down. What? You heard me, he stated. You've overstayed your welcome. You need to move out. The reality check. I just sat there, trying to process. I was 23. I had a regular career and could have left long ago, but I stayed because they needed me. I paid the energy bill, internet, and groceries most weeks, which they couldn't afford because my father had been unemployed for years and my mother only worked part-time. I was not a burden. I was the reason the lights remained on in that house. And now, out of nowhere, I'm being tossed out like a useless freeloader. Mom has finally spoken up. Maybe we should talk about this later. No, Dad interrupted. This is my house. I make the rules. And I say he's done here. Lily's fear. Lily set down her fork. She was barely 16 and I could tell she was afraid. She looked at our parents as if she didn't recognize them. What did it mean for her that they could throw me out so easily? I took a deep breath. I wasn't about to argue or plead. What if they wanted me out? Fine. But they were not prepared for what that really meant. I slumped back in my chair. All right, I said. Dad sat up straighter as if he had won an imaginary fight. Mom still looked uneasy, but she said nothing. Perhaps she was in shock. Perhaps she didn't care as much as I imagined she would. I stood up, grabbed my plate, and took it to the sink. I didn't want to give them the reaction they expected. Instead, I gazed at Lily, who remained tight and uncertain. I gave her a slight nod. She was the only one at the table that I still cared about. Dad sipped his drink, as if nothing had happened. Mom returned to picking at her mashed potatoes. Lily continued looking at me as if she wanted to say something but didn't. I did not remain to complete dinner. I just walked out. The silent goodbye. That night, I walked directly to my room, closed the door, and began packing. I wasn't going to waste time figuring out why they were doing this. If they wanted me gone, I was gone. However, this meant they would lose all I had paid for, and I wasn't about to warn them. I packed quietly, but I could hear them talking below. Mom's voice sounded low and terrified. Dad's tone sounded forceful, as if he were attempting to persuade her of anything. I caught bits and pieces. He's old enough. We can handle it. He should have moved out years ago. An hour later, Lily knocked at my door. I opened it, and she slipped inside, closing it behind her. She appeared distressed, her eyes red as if she had been sobbing. What the hell was that? She said. I don't know, I replied, tucking my laptop into my bag. But I'm leaving tomorrow. She shakes her head. That's crazy. You pay for everything? They can't even afford food without you. Not my problem anymore. Lily bit her lip, clearly attempting to keep back more tears. Where are you going? I'll figure it out. The fact was that I had some money saved up, but I had not intended on moving out so soon. I'd have to locate a place quickly, perhaps staying at a friend's for a while. But I wasn't concerned. I would be all right. They would not. Lily paused. She stopped herself. I knew what she'd ask. She wanted to join me, but she was still in high school, and as much as I disliked leaving her behind, I couldn't bring her with me. You know they'd never let that happen, you said. She stared down at the floor. Yeah. I finished packing while she stood there, as if she didn't want to go. Finally, she sighed. You're going to regret this. I grinned. I know. The next morning, I left before they even awoke. I hauled my bags downstairs, loaded my car, and took one last glance around the house. There's no sadness. No regrets. Just relief. Then, as I was driving out of the driveway, I entered my banking app and erased my name off all bills. Electric, internet, water, even the Netflix account I had paid for each of them. Without me, everything would shut down within a month. I grinned, put my car into drive, and drove away without looking back. For the next few days, I stayed at my friend Jake's apartment while looking for a place of my own. His sofa sucked. His dog, Max, would not stop looking at me while I tried to sleep. His roommate repeatedly asked, "Are you staying forever?" But none of this mattered because I was free. No more paying for a house that I didn't want to live in. No longer pretending to appreciate a man who threw me out of Christmas dinner. No more being regarded as a walking ATM. I was finally doing something for myself. 3 days after I left, my phone started ringing. Initially, I ignored it. 7 missed calls from my mother. My father called me twice, which surprised me because he seldom did. Lily sent a handful of SMS. I also ignored those. Until she sent it. They're freaking out. The power's been cut off. I grinned. They honestly believed that the bills would magically pay themselves. Then, another text. Dad's losing his mind. He said you did something to the house. Oh, this was getting better. I could just imagine Dad stomping about in the dark, cursing at my mother while she cried over the Wi-Fi being down. An hour later, my phone called again. This time I responded. The moment I took up the phone, my mother's voice hit me like a hurricane. Kevin, we don't know what happened. The power's out. The internet's down. The water bill you didn't pay, I replied simply. Silence. Then, in a hushed voice, you paid for these? I nearly laughed. Are you serious? Who else did you think was paying for them? Your father said. She interrupted herself. I already knew. My father was too proud to acknowledge he didn't know how things worked. He presumably assured her that everything would be all right, that the house would function flawlessly even without me. Not my problem anymore, I said. Kevin, please. We didn't mean I hung up. Not my problem anymore. I assumed that was the end of it. They would figure it out. Perhaps my father will finally get off his ass and get a job. Perhaps my mother would work more hours. Perhaps they will sell something to keep the lights on. Either way, it's not my concern. The next morning, I awoke to a message from my bank. Fraud alert. A suspicious login attempt was detected. I sat up fast, my heart racing. I checked my email. 3 additional alerts. Someone had attempted to enter my account, and I already recognized who it was. I quickly logged in and went over my purchases. Nothing had been taken yet, but there it was. An attempt to reset a password. Another failed login. Then a third. I clenched my jaw. My father must have been quite desperate, calling Lily. I phoned Lily. She responded right away. I was just about to call you, she said quietly. Dad's freaking out. He keeps yelling about money. He was on the computer all morning. I breathed sharply, trying to get into my bank account. She was silent for a second, before cursing beneath her breath. Does he have my old passwords? I inquired. Probably, she confessed. You know how Mom used to keep them in that little notebook by the computer. I knew it. My father must have gone through that, figuring I'd be stupid enough to continue using the same passwords from high school. Kevin, Lily whispered. Her voice shook. He's really pissed. I think she paused. I heard shouts in the background. My father's booming voice, the banging of doors, and my mother crying. I think he's going to do something stupid. Lily's words sent shivers down my spine. What do you mean? What did he say? I inquired, squeezing my phone more tightly. She lowered her voice. He's saying you ruined us. That you did this on purpose to screw him over. He's talking about calling the cops. I nearly laughed. For what? Not paying his bills? I don't know, she hissed. He's losing it. Mom's crying, saying she'll talk to you. But he won't listen. He keeps saying he's not gonna get away with this. Kevin, I think he wants to go after you. That took the smile off my face. I had expected my father to get desperate, to beg, perhaps even try to guilt trip me. But to believe he would gain revenge on me? That was a new level of foolishness. Locking down everything. Lock your door, I instructed her. If he does something crazy, call me. I hung up and quickly changed all of my passwords, bank accounts, email streaming services, even my Amazon login. Then I called my bank to report the hacking attempt. They had locked my account so tightly that I even had difficulty logging in for a few hours. I assumed that was the end of it. I was completely mistaken. That night, Jake and I were hanging out in his apartment, playing some ridiculous Xbox game. Then, bang! Someone slammed the door. Hard. Jake paused the game. Are you expecting someone? I was not. I already got a horrible feeling. I got up, walked to the peephole, and my stomach dropped. It was my father. He was standing in the corridor, hands clenched and breathing like a bull, prepared to charge. Jake asked, "Who is it?" I stepped back from the door. My dad. Jake stood up. "Dude, what's going on?" Bang. Kevin opened the door. I did not move. Bang. This time, it's harder. I know you're in there. You think you can just walk away from this? Jake scowled at me. Dude, should we? Before he finished, my father kicked the door in, calling 911. That was it. I grabbed my phone and called 911. My dad just showed up at my apartment. I told the dispatcher. He's banging on the door, yelling at me, and he just tried to kick it in. Jake stepped back. Kevin, this is crazy. I met his gaze. Yeah, I know. I held the phone to my ear while my father continued yelling, "You ungrateful little. You think you can just walk away? You owe us?" "You, sir, officers are on their way," the dispatcher stated. 2 minutes later, I heard sirens. Then my father's voice went silent. A knock at the door. "Police, open up." I opened the door just in time to see 2 officers handcuff my father. His face was hot and his chest heaved, but as he noticed me standing there, his expression altered. There were no regrets. There is no humiliation. Just pure hatred. "You did this?" he muttered as he was dragged away. I simply stood there, unaffected, because the reality was, he did this to himself. They took my father away that night, but I knew things weren't finished. An hour later, Lily called. "Mom's losing it," she explained. "She's crying and saying it's all your fault." "Yeah, that sounds about right. She keeps saying you have to fix this. She's already calling people, trying to get bail money." I nearly laughed. With what money? Silence. Because we knew they didn't have any? No electricity. There's no internet. No savings. And now, there is no father figure to yell at everyone while trying to be in charge. Without me, they were sinking quickly. I should have felt bad. But I only felt relief. "Keep an eye on her," I advised Lily. "If she does anything crazy, call me." Lily texted me the next morning. "Mom's selling your stuff." I froze. Then I called her. She picked up immediately. Her voice harsh. "I told you to fix this? Are you selling my stuff?" A pause. Then, bluntly, "We need money, Kevin." I clenched my jaw. "So you're stealing from me? You don't live here anymore," she yelled. "You left all this behind. It's in our house." That makes it ours. She felt no regret. There is no guilt. It's just entitlement. "I'm calling the cops." "Don't you dare." I hung up. Then I phoned the cops. 2 hours later, I received a call back. "We talked to your mother," the officer stated. "She wasn't happy, but she's agreed to hold your things until you can pick them up." I messaged Lily. "I'm coming over." But I should have realized they were not prepared. Because when I arrived at the house, something made my stomach plummet. My automobile, sitting on the driveway. It should not have been there. I had left it at Jake's flat. I turned off the engine. My heart thumping. My car wasn't simply here. It had been driven. The front seat was folded back, as if someone had sat in it. The glove compartment was open. And, worst of all, the gas tank was nearly empty. I clenched my fist. They'd stolen my car. The confrontation before I could exit. The front door swung open. My mother stepped outside, arms crossed. "You called the cops on me?" she remarked. "You stole my car," I snapped back. She scoffed. "It was just sitting there? You weren't using it." I stared at her, trying to grasp the absurdity of this logic. "It's my car." "How did you even get it?" She didn't respond, but I already knew. They had an extra key. "Mom," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "if you don't give me my key, I'm calling the cops again." Her expression flickered for a second. Then, without speaking, she stormed inside. A minute later, she returned and threw the key at me. It struck my chest and landed on the grass. There, she spat. "Happy?" The first picked it up, trying not to be angry. "I'm taking my things, and then I'm leaving for good." I walked past her and into the home. Lily waited in the hall, looking nervous. "She took your laptop and pawned it," she said quietly. I closed my eyes. Take a breath in, breathe out. Then I turned to my mother. "Where's my laptop?" She raised her chin. "I told you, we needed money. That was it." I took out my phone, dialed 911 for the second time this week, and let her watch. "Yes, I want to report a stolen vehicle and stolen property," I responded, looking her dead in the eyes. "My mother has just revealed that she pawned my laptop without authorization." Her face lost its color. This time, she was the one who had to deal with the police. My mother worried when she realized I wasn't bluffing. "You can't do this," she muttered, her tone low. "I'm your mother." I ignored her. "Yes, officer. I have proof that she admitted to taking my belongings and pawning them," I stated over the phone. "I want to press charges." Lily stood motionless, her gaze flitting between us. My mother's hands were shaking now. She was absolutely taken aback, as if she believed she could keep pushing, and I would never push back. "Kevin," she said again, this time softly. Like if she were pleading, "We're struggling. Your father's in jail." I had no choice. "You had a choice," I explained. "You could have worked more. You could have sold your own stuff. You could have asked for help instead of throwing me out like garbage." She blinked rapidly, her face contorted. I was angry. I laughed. "Yeah. So was I." I heard sirens outside. My mother jumped. A few minutes later, 2 officers walked through the door. "Sir, did you call about the stolen property?" one of them inquired. I nodded and pointed to my mother. "She took my laptop and pawned it. I want to press charges." My mother gasped, as if I'd stabbed her. "Kevin, don't do this." The officers turned to her. "Monsieur AM, is this true?" She hesitated, her gaze shifting between me, Lily, and the cops. I could see her calculating, attempting to determine whether she could lie her way out of this. Then Lily spoke. She told him herself, just before he called you. My mother snapped her head at Lily so quickly, it was almost frightening. "You little ma'am," one of the cops interrupted her. "Do you have a receipt from the pawn shop?" Her face fell. She knew what was coming. They took her outside. I looked through the window while they spoke with her for a few minutes. Handcuffs appeared unexpectedly. She was straining, crying, and yelling. Neighbors looked through their blinds. The entire street most likely heard her weeping about how she was simply a struggling mother and how unjust this was. Lily's realization. Lily stood beside me, looking out the window. She gulped hard. "Is this really happening?" I nodded. "Yes." And for the first time in a long time, I felt calm. The text message. My phone buzzed with a message from an unexpected number. "You're going to regret this." My chest tightened. I read it again. Then I realized my father had been released on bond. When I saw that message, I knew exactly what had occurred. Someone had bailed my father out, and I had a fairly solid idea who. Probably one of his old drinking cronies, or perhaps a distant family member who hadn't heard the entire story. In any case, he was done and angry. I showed Lily the text. Her face turned pallid. "Kevin, you need to leave." "No," I replied. I turned to face the cops, who were still outside dealing with my mother. "Can I go in and get the rest of my stuff?" One of them nodded. "As long as it's okay with your sister." Lily was already moving. "Let's make this quick." We walked upstairs and packed everything that was mine. Clothes, old video games, even the silly things I had left behind, thinking I'd come back for them one day. I was not coming back. Ever. As I took the last box to my car, my mother was still crying in the driveway, pleading with the officers to let her go. "This is a misunderstanding. He's my son. He wouldn't do this to me." I just strolled by her, unconcerned. She screamed my name, as if it would suddenly change anything. I got in my car. Lily stood in front of my window, shuffling from foot to foot. "I don't want to stay here." I exhaled. "I know you don't, But you only have 2 years until you're 18. She nodded with watery eyes. I'll be fine. I'll just be quiet and keep my head down. Call me if anything happens. She nodded again. Then headlights arrived on the roadway. An automobile turned onto our street. My stomach sank. It was my father. He pulled up right as I started the engine. He hardly had time to go before I put it in reverse and backed into the street. He stared at me with hatred in his eyes, as if he were about to approach and try something. I rolled down my window just enough to carry my voice. You try to come near me again. I'm filing a restraining order. His hands tightened into fists. You think you're better than us? I smiled. I know I am. Then I drove away. It was the last time I saw them. I blocked my parents' phone numbers, changed my financial information, moved, and never looked back. Lily's independence. Lily kept out for 2 years, just as she promised. She left as soon as she turned 18. She moved in with a buddy and headed off to college. We're still talking all the time. The consequences? My parents? My father never had a job. My mother lost the house a year later. They bounced around for a while, destroying relationships with family. And the last I heard, they were renting a dilapidated flat in a poor neighborhood. They attempted to reach out to me. Facebook messages, unknown numbers, even letters. I never responded because they had made their pick for Christmas dinner, and I made mine. I evicted my sister-in-law after she left biohazards in my home, leading to family conflicts. Now my husband is stuck outside with her. My spouse has a sister and 2 brothers. I'm not really fond of his sister and her spouse. After losing their house, they have recently been couch surfing. This may have been prevented had they behaved sensibly. They initially remained with my in-laws, but they were asked to leave because of their unruly kids, citing my father-in-law's diabetes. After their elder children moved out, they then moved in with my husband's older brother and his wife, who had 2 extra rooms. However, they were forced to leave after 3 weeks due to planned renovations. They helped out around the house and generally kept things clean, so the older brother and his wife were pleased with them. The younger brother then moved in with them. The sister-in-law, now, assisted and managed her kids while they were there. Since her mother was coming to help with the baby, the youngest brother's wife, who was quite proud of her home and had just given birth, let them remain for a while. Finally, my husband agreed to take them in after being emotionally coerced. I only agreed if they kept the house tidy, especially because they had previously been untidy in my house. For instance, they would throw trash next to the trash can, but not inside, frequently leaving behind dried and odorous food remnants. Even worse, instead of putting her old sanitary towels into the bathroom bin, Sil would frequently leave them on top of it. I asked the youngest brother's wife about their neatness before they moved in. According to her, everything was maintained tidy and orderly, so they had no complaints. But during family get-togethers over the holidays, I had personally witnessed how they behaved differently in other households than mine. I made my youngest brother and my parents-in-law witnesses to their pledge to help out around the house and to keep it as tidy as they found it, in order to maintain accountability. They would have to depart right away if they disobeyed these regulations. Sil consented but retorted mockingly, "As you wish, Your Highness." It was all right for the first 5 days. Then, this morning, I discovered a used, incorrectly wrapped sanitary towel on top of the trash can. Her daughter, who was staying in my daughter's room, placed a used tampon on the sink and smashed the shampoo and conditioner in the bathroom. Additionally, because Sil's husband had left for work early, the kitchen was in disarray. I couldn't risk my inquisitive toddler picking up a bloody sanitary towel. I knocked on the door of the guest room and instructed her to gather her belongings and go. With an indignant expression, she asserted her innocence and said, I could throw it away if it bothered me. It was just some blood. The final straw was that, after grabbing her luggage, I began packing her things. She refused to leave the house at first, claiming that she didn't follow my instructions and that she was going to wait for her brother. I informed her that I also own this house. A few hours ago, I dropped her off at my in-laws with her youngest children. Her husband made a scene when I wouldn't let him in after he returned from work. He visited my in-laws, but because of Phil's sickness, they don't want them there. Within 20 minutes after my husband got home from work, my in-laws and her family were in our driveway. They are still arguing about being allowed inside while standing outside. I warned my husband that he was not welcome in our house either if he backed down, and I wouldn't open the door. Second paragraph. First update. A little update. My driveway appeared to be the scene of a Mexican standoff yesterday. I declined to walk out and participate in the conversation while they were out there. 2 hours, 2 whole hours later, they were gone. They are at my in-laws right now, but they said they would come back tomorrow when everyone would be home from work to talk about the situation and come up with a practical answer. That's what my hubby told me anyway. I informed my husband that I would not have them in my home as soon as he entered. Additionally, he cleaned up after them when I instructed him to. He asked me why I made him do it after he had cleaned up. I informed him that, in contrast to him, I was not biologically linked to other people, and that I was equally repulsed by their bodily fluids. I went on to say that he could only imagine how awful I used to feel when I had to clean up after them if he thought it was dirty. He bleached the sink 3 times and said he would buy a new bin. We have a plan for tomorrow that states they will never move in with us. He left the task of cleaning up the shampoo and conditioner mess in the bathroom to his niece. Our daughter is welcome to use our shower in the meanwhile. Tomorrow, we'll see how this plays out. Third paragraph. Second update. It was a long day with my in-laws yesterday. We left early in order to finish it. A guilt trip was the first thing my in-laws did. They first said they would house them until they found a place, but it wouldn't be good for Phil's health because of his diabetes. In order for them to stay with them because they have extra bedrooms, I advised them to advise their daughter to discipline her kids so they wouldn't run around like monkeys. Syl wasn't pleased about that. She launched into a diatribe, accusing me of trying to sour relations between her and her brother, and claiming that I had always envied her. I told her that since she didn't like her own life, it was unrealistic for me to be envious of hers. Since my husband never gets involved in my family's affairs, she wondered whether he would mind if I told him what to do with his family. She instructed him to establish the rule and let me know that his sister and her family would remain for however long it took them to relocate. That was unacceptable to my hubby. He informed her that it was a 2 yes, 1 no situation, and that the house belonged to me equally to his. Even though I was now a stay-at-home wife, I still made contributions to the house's purchase when I was employed. His mill was staying because of the baby, so the younger brother and his wife indicated they wouldn't be able to host them. Renovations were mentioned by the older ones. The wives of the older and younger brothers claimed that I was making this up, saying that she always kept their home and her own tidy. I was advised to accept it and behave like family. Since I saw what I saw and her brother witnessed it and had to clean it up, I informed them. I wasn't there to debate about her cleanliness. He attested to the fact that he did, and that I wasn't lying. After making a mistake, my sister-in-law asked her brother, "Why did you clean it up?" "Because I was supposed to clean it up," she said. Either she knows she has the entire family in her pocket, or she is the most stupid person alive to acknowledge that. In any event, I made it plain that she would not be staying with me and that, because she got along much better with the other members of the family, they would find a solution on their own. My niece refused to clean up the leftover mess when my husband told her that she was old enough to do so. "She's your niece, but my daughter. Don't you dare tell her what to do," her father chimed in, causing a heated argument that they both had to end. I explained to her and her husband that my husband and I were simply there to collect money for the trash we had to discard because she was scattering biohazards all over the house. "It would never happen," she replied, laughing in my face. "All right," I said. It happened so fast that day that I still had her daughter's, her husband's, and her 2 younger children's tablets, along with some of her jewelry and a few other items. I hope you understand that when I threw you out, I didn't pack all your possessions. I assured her that everything would be sold to cover my expenses. She was shouting loudly about what she would do to me if I dared to sell anything as we were leaving. Having my back, my hubby advised me to sell anything I needed to. They continued to text my husband later, pleading with him to do them a favor by putting up with her for a few months until she recovered. I informed him that I would never consent to allowing her, her slobby husband, and her swarm of kids to return. They also tried to guilt me about his niece's education by texting me, saying that if they find a rental outside of the school zone, she could have to start at another school. because they don't have a place to remain near her school. Tough luck, I responded back, then blocked them. Although my husband won't block his parents, he was upset with his brothers for accusing him of being self-centered for not taking them in when they were going through a difficult time. Although they acknowledged that it was disgusting, they justified her actions by speculating that I might have done something to make it worse. Finally, the wife of the oldest brother sent a voicemail to my husband's WhatsApp using her husband's phone. She said, "I'm not kidding. You're still fine to watch your 6-year-old on Tuesdays and Wednesdays as usual, aren't you?" I instructed him to determine the response to that inquiry. A new family was moving into the area, so I had to stay a little while longer after I went to pick up my kids. We held a brief meet and greet since the parents wanted to get to know the parents of their kids' classmates. Since I often pick up my husband's older brother's 6-year-old daughter on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, the office brought her to me. Since no one had been to pick her up, her instructor, assuming I was late because of the meeting with the new parents, instructed an office administrator to bring her to me when she saw me waiting in the hallway. I informed them that on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I was no longer in charge of her. They must have contacted her mother when they brought her back to the office. My husband informed me when I got home from the meet and greet that his parents had called and expressed their disapproval of me leaving their grandchild. Additionally, they placed his older brother's wife on the phone, and she and my husband got into a heated argument. He spoke with the SILI, expelled as well. In the end, my husband informed his parents that they would not be allowed to speak to him for a week, and that he would only unblock them if they sincerely apologized to him and to me. After I made it apparent that I would no longer offer free services, he clarified that it was the parents' responsibility to arrange for pickup. For the time being, the SIL who I expelled is still living with her parents. My in-laws are hosting her spouse, 2 of her elder children, and her younger 2. The 2 younger ones, and the other 2 older ones, are dispersed throughout the other 2 homes. They did, however, imply that it would be a short-term arrangement, because she had assured them that she would soon convince her brother to change his ways. I believe I have a long journey ahead of me. The wife of the oldest brother was present when I dropped off my kids at school on Friday. She trailed after me. She confronted me in the store parking lot when I paused to pick up some products. I refused to accept her sincere apologies and desire to make things right. She was desperate, claiming that since she is the lead and must oversee, she would lose the project if she missed one more week of overtime. She had to pick up her 6-year-old since her husband was unable to adjust his schedule. She argued that resenting her 6-year-old over a casual remark was not justified. Her child blamed me for the biohazards left in my house, so I told her that wasn't a casual remark. She stated that she hoped to diffuse the tension and that all she wanted was for everyone to get along. I suggested that she ask the SIL for assistance, but she said that the SIL had declined since she was barely able to manage her 3 children under the age of 7. In order to free up time and energy to pick up the kids, I advised her to ask the youngest wife, who has her mother residing with her. She claimed that rather than assisting with her 6-year-old, the youngest wife preferred to focus on the early recollections of her own child. I advised her to accept it and work with the people she regarded as family to find a solution. I then proceeded with my shopping. She was there once again when I went to pick up my child in the afternoon. She accompanied me home once we exited the pickup line. I parallel parked my driveway to keep her from parking there and bothering me at my door. In order to transfer the car, I texted my husband to ask him to let me know when he would be home. She parked on the side road and came to my house despite being unable to find a spot. I refused to open the door when she rang the ring. She went around the back and knocked on my back door, telling me that since we were family, I couldn't avoid her forever. Through the glass, I threatened to contact the police for harassment if she didn't leave. Then she went off. My mother-in-law and father-in-law were there when I went to answer our doorbell in the evening. I let them in because they wanted to apologize and come inside. The first thing they told us was how much the past 3 days had changed them. They then apologized and requested me to return to my regular self. According to my mother-in-law, because life is full of ups and downs, you may have to tolerate negativity from family members at times. It can't be all sunshine and roses all the time. They tried to guilt trip me into helping out with a 6-year-old by pointing out that her mother and I had previously been on good terms. So my husband stopped his mother and said, "Then why do we, critical, back, slower, lemon, and I, have to be the only ones on the receiving end of the negativity? When will you hold my sister and the others accountable for their behavior?" When she chose her side, I added, she forfeited that privilege. Given that she might lose her work, they wondered if I would be able to sleep at night. When my husband mentioned how much I had done for her without receiving payment, I said, yes. They retorted that it shouldn't matter if I had another child who was already potty trained, because I was already at home. Since I had given up a lot for their kid over the years, I assured them that it did make a difference. I added that they had no right to force me to assist if they couldn't persuade the younger brother's wife to do so. When I would return the items I was holding hostage, was what they wanted to know. My spouse interrupted, claiming that he was the one holding them captive, and that they would be given back after his sister covered the costs. According to my file, Sile would be justified in informing the police about the theft. In response, my spouse said, she can do as she pleases. My spouse then disclosed something that I was unaware of. He instructed them to inform his sister that he had canceled the hotel and all of the summer holiday plans, including his niece's horseback riding. He clarified that he didn't feel compelled to cover Sil's expenses if her father may ask him, "Who do you think you are to boss my daughter around?" My spouse made the decision to stop funding because their father was uncertain about the uncle-niece relationship and his authority to teach her responsibility. This disturbed my mother-in-law. He acknowledged that he had canceled it when she remarked, "You haven't done that, have you? I thought we would all have a great vacation." I refused to accept their attempts at justification, saying that Isel had a lot on her plate with a house loss and young children. I informed them that she had made bad decisions that led to her current predicament, and that having a 9th kid would not make things better. According to my mill, her body, her choices, means that every woman should make her own decisions regarding family planning, and I shouldn't tell Sile what she should or shouldn't do. She argued it was different, claiming she wasn't telling me to have more or fewer children since she liked grandchildren. The more, the better. I responded, like you're dictating to me right now by weaseling your way into our home under the guise of an apology? I said to her, you can't expect me to look after other people's children either. The less stress I have, the merrier I am. That also falls under my body, my choice. We had decided to be less friendly over a little issue, so they turned to my husband and asked whether he was truly putting them through all of this. He replied, scrubbing down the 2 bathrooms after my niece and sister wasn't exactly the highlight of my life. We kindly requested them to leave since they were unable to stop apologizing and complaining about us not going with them for the family holiday and about canceling Sil's and her family's vacation, which they said destroyed the atmosphere for everyone. The doorbell kept ringing, and there was frantic hammering on our door on Saturday early, waking us up. Sil and her oldest son were there. My spouse assured me that he would take care of it. She attempted to push through as he opened the door, but my husband stopped her. She was yelling and claiming to be able to knock some sense into me by coming inside. To put things in perspective, I am a year and a few months older than her, and she is little over 2 years older than my husband. She shoved $300 in his face and asked, "Is she happy now?" That cradle-snatching expletive. She continued to abuse me, calling me a jealous expletive, and saying that I had ruined their family by controlling him. She went on to say that she expected him to promptly reschedule the vacation and activities now that she had given the money back. My spouse said that even if hell froze over, it wouldn't occur. While he went to get something, he instructed her to wait outside. He entered, put their things in a bag, and left out one of the tablets he had purchased and was still paying for with insurance. He gave her the bag after opening the door. She started swearing and urged him to mature. She threatened to file a report against him for causing damage to her possessions. He calmly retorted that everything was captured on camera and cautioned her against taking legal action because her children could hardly afford a lawyer, much less a place to live. He warned her not to set foot on our land ever again before slamming the door in her face. Without any further drama, she departed. My mother-in-law and father-in-law later called us and tried to talk sense into our heads. I had agreed with my husband to allow them to see our kids as long as they met certain requirements. Even though I'm not a lawyer, I informed them that their rights were restricted in our state when they claimed to have grandparent rights. They had to respect me and my family if they wanted to have a relationship with their grandchildren. We don't currently communicate with the other brothers, their spouses, and then, or her immediate relatives. To convey a message, we momentarily unblock them before blocking them once more. We don't mind at all if the older brother's kids wish to get in touch with us or visit. The 6-year-old can only come here on weekends when we have time to host them, and only if her elder siblings are present to watch over her. There won't be any more surprise visits. We will also block their parents if they call us using those numbers. The wife of the older brother called me while I was messaging and offered to pay me $7.50 per hour for the days I watched her 6-year-old. She texted me to sweeten the bargain, offering to pay me for the previous 3 months, but I said, no, thank you. I'll pass on that wonderful opportunity. Still, I declined. My parents publicly humiliated me at my golden sister's party. I cut ties, rebuilt myself, and exposed the truth about their toxic legacy. My sister, Maya, 47F, has always cast a shadow over me, a 42F. We were brought up in a wealthy Boston suburb by parents, both in their late 70s, who were very focused on success and social standing. Even though we were both intellectually gifted, Maya was always presented as our family's jewel while I was only an afterthought. This dynamic was evident from my very first recollections. Our parents would have lavish celebrations for Maya's birthdays, inviting the kids from the wealthiest families in their neighborhood. In contrast, my birthdays were frequently overlooked or commemorated with a hurried card, explaining that we already spent too much on Maya's party this year. This trend persisted throughout our schooling. Our parents hosted an all-night celebration when Maya was accepted to a prestigious private high school. They simply remarked, "At least we won't have to pay for this one." When I was awarded a merit scholarship to an equally renowned institution 2 years later, every accomplishment I made was compared to Maya's and found wanting. The difference was much more noticeable while we were in college. Our parents covered all of Maya's living expenses and tuition at Yale Law School, as well as a nice apartment. Regarding my schooling, they advised me to take out loans or pursue a less costly job route because they had already committed their resources to Maya's law school fund. In spite of this, I obtained scholarships, worked several jobs, and earned an honors degree in computer science. When we started our careers, Maya took the route our parents had carefully mapped out for her, joining a prominent legal practice and moving up the corporate ladder as predicted. In the computer sector, I forged my own route by relying more on talent and perseverance than on family ties to launch my career. Family get-togethers were usually fraught with tension. Maya was referred to as our successful daughter by our parents, who would treat me as though I didn't exist. Our mother would hastily shift the topic or make disparaging remarks such, "Oh, she does something with computers?" When family members inquired about my line of work, I was able to establish a decent job in spite of the ongoing, subtle, but persistent emotional assault. I managed a team of engineers and had a comfortable 6-figure salary as a middle management at a burgeoning software business by the time I was in my early 40s. However, this was nothing compared to Maya's accomplishments as a lawyer in our parents' eyes. It all came to a climax during Maya's promotion party 3 years ago. Our parents kept reminding everyone that she was the youngest person ever to be appointed a senior partner at her firm. More than 200 members of Boston's affluent social circles were invited to the grand ballroom of the Fairmont Copley Plaza, which they had rented out. The intricate floral arrangements, the champagne towers, and the string quartet playing in the corner are just a few of the agonizing details I can still clearly recall from that night. In order to celebrate the accomplishment of their golden kid, our parents had gone all out. I felt like an alien at what should have been a family gathering, so I sat at my designated table, a little away from the main family table, and tried to act dignified. I anticipated the customary kudos for Maya when our father got up to speak, but what transpired was more than I could have ever dreamed. He opened by referring to Maya as their greatest blessing while addressing the full assembly of Boston's social and legal elite. I had long recognized that she was their golden child, so that part wasn't shocking. The room burst in amusement as he went on to joke that they should have stopped having children after Maya, since the second ones are usually useless anyway. He said that they could have spent all of their time and money on Maya rather than wasting them on me. My mother said, "At least we had one child we could be proud of," as she stood next to him, grinning and nodding. Their words weren't even the worst part. It was observing the reactions of those in my immediate vicinity, who seemed to find my public humiliation amusing. I frantically glanced at Maya in the hopes that she would speak up, or else demonstrate her sisterly support. However, she merely shot me a pitying look before joining in the uncomfortable giggles. "They're just joking," Maya remarked, simply when I questioned her later in the hotel's powder room. "Perhaps they would be proud of you too, if you put in as much effort as I did." Those remarks, given with such casual harshness, were the last straw. My relationship with my family ended that evening. I had put up with being the inferior daughter for years, but this public admission of my inadequacy was too much. I immediately removed them from all of my social media accounts, blocked their phone numbers, and erased their email addresses as soon as I came home. I got a job at another software business across town in less than a week, and I immediately started a new life. I gave my job and personal development all of my attention for the ensuing 3 years. I developed a solid team, received numerous promotions, and even began coaching more junior female workers. For the first time in my life, I felt genuinely valued for my abilities, and my new coworkers recognized my leadership style and skill set. My parents were worried about my absence from family events, I was told by distant relatives, but their worry was never followed by an apology. Telling everyone that I was being oversensitive and dramatic, Maya seemed to defend their actions. She even implied that my emotional instability was evidence that our parents had been correct about me all along. Life continued, and my independence brought me serenity. I traveled widely, purchased a stunning brownstone in Back Bay, and formed sincere friendships with individuals who valued me for who I am. I found a sense of self-worth that was unrelated to comparisons to my sister, and the burden of continuously attempting to earn my parents' love subsided. My parents sent me several urgent texts yesterday after I hadn't heard from them in 3 years. The first few arrived via email, followed by voicemails on my work phone, and lastly, text messages from unfamiliar numbers. I felt something bad must have happened because they hadn't made an attempt to get in touch with me in months. I called them back after unblocking their number against my better judgment, my pulse pounding as I braced myself for any news they could have. Must I tell them what they told me? Their predicament is almost poetically ironic, and I'm thinking of a plan of action that might eventually let them see the repercussions of their actions. However, I want to be sure that my judgment isn't influenced by past traumas. I've been thinking about how life can take such unexpected turns while sitting in my home office for the past few hours and gazing out my window at the Boston skyline. For me, the last 3 years have been life-changing. My team now looks up to me instead of me being the constant letdown. I played a key role in helping us land a significant deal that recently made our business famous. In retrospect, I see how much their unrelenting criticism impacted every facet of my existence. I hopped from relationship to relationship in my 20s and 30s, constantly selecting individuals who would treat me the same way my parents did, as though I was never quite good enough. To comprehend the pattern and overcome it, years of therapy were required. Their disdain for my accomplishments even affected my job decisions. Whenever I was successful, I would minimize my achievements, almost as an act of contrition. I didn't even inform them when I got my first big promotion, because I knew they would somehow compare it to Maya's career. Ironically, they never realized how strong it was to launch a profession without their help, since they were too preoccupied with upholding their flawless image and Maya's flawless reputation. Every accomplishment I made was the result of my own perseverance and diligence. Maya provided financial support and connections, but I was left to fend for myself in the corporate world. I can't help but think about how my parents' fixation with social standing and perfection has finally come back to haunt them as I get ready to disclose what they told me. After all, the cosmos appears to have a sense of humor. I'm also struggling with the fact that, in spite of everything they've done, including years of emotional abuse and humiliation in front of others, a tiny part of me still cares about my family's well-being. Perhaps that makes me human, or perhaps it makes me weak. In any case, I am certain that the choice I make next will permanently alter everyone's life. Shall the first share their words with you? What do I intend to do? I am aware that some people could argue that I should be the larger person and take the high road. But perhaps it's time for them to comprehend what it's like to lose everything they hold dear, including their reputation, social status, and ideal family image, after decades of being destroyed and that embarrassing speech 3 years ago. My office is now covered with deep shadows as the sun sets over the Charles River. I'm getting more and more frantic as my phone continues to beep with additional messages from my folks. My silence is probably making them nuts because they have never had to wait for anything in their lives. Excellent. I believe I'm prepared to discuss what they told me and my next steps. To be clear, though, this isn't about retaliation. It's time to hold them accountable for years of emotional abuse. This is about justice. Justice is at stake here, and they must be held responsible for years of emotional torture. Showing them that their useless second daughter is more powerful than they ever thought is the goal here. If you would want to hear the rest of this story, please let me know. It will be worth the wait, I assure you. First update. I spent the next few hours assembling the startling facts of Maya's predicament following that initial phone conversation with my parents. Not only was what they disclosed shocking, but it also completely destroyed the flawless image they had worked so hard to create over the years. My parents claim that Maya has been battling a serious cocaine addiction. 3 months ago, she lost her job at the law firm, but she was able to keep it a secret from our parents by acting as though she was still employed. Only after one of their country club friends noticed Maya in a troubling state outside a well-known drug house in a dilapidated area of Boston did they learn the truth. What is the most ironic aspect of this whole circumstance? It seems that Maya began using cocaine in order to continue performing well at work. In order to keep up with the rigorous schedule and high-pressure atmosphere, she sought chemical aid due to the burden of being the youngest senior partner and our parents' unending expectations. I could hear the shame seeping out of my mother's voice as she tearfully described how Maya had spent all of her money and their retirement fund to fuel her habit. What really surprised me, though, was that their reputation, rather than Maya's health or recuperation, remained their top priority. As if someone would overhear our phone talk, my mother muttered, "We can't let anyone at the club know about this. What would people think? We've already had to justify her absence from recent social gatherings." The portion that made my blood boil then came. As is his custom, my father looked for someone else to blame for his golden child's decline. "Back then, you didn't expose her to drugs, did you?" His voice was full of accusations as he asked. "You were always the one who rebelled." I became silent in shock. They were attempting to blame me for this, despite the fact that I hadn't spoken to them or Maya in 3 years. They didn't seem to care that I've never even done drugs. They believe that their useless daughter is somehow to blame for any issues with their ideal daughter. My mother promptly added their true motive for phoning. She begged, "Please come home and help us take care of her. People would find out if we sent her to rehab, so we can't. You might be able to take a few weeks off from work. After all, your work isn't nearly as significant as Maya's former work." It was verified that nothing had changed by that final remark, which was so nonchalantly harsh. They couldn't resist making fun of me, even in this circumstance. However, they later disclosed something that further fanned the ridiculousness of their request. Maya's former coworkers had already made 2 attempts at intervention, including offering to covertly set up private therapy at a covert facility in Switzerland. My dad clarified, "We can't risk anyone finding out. The reputation of our family would be ruined if it were known that Maya had entered a rehab facility. We would like to deal with this internally, with me serving as her full-time caregiver, their plan, if you can call it that." was to keep Maya confined to her old room at their home. Through sheer resolve and familial duty, they appeared to believe that their useless daughter might somehow overcome their perfect one's drug addiction. I'm still in shock over their foolishness. I find it ironic that after years of ignoring and disparaging me, they are now seeking for my assistance. Even more startling, though, is their readiness to jeopardize Maya's health and maybe her life in order to protect their reputation. We would like to deal with this internally. They had a plan, if you can call it that, to keep Maya confined to her old room at their house, while I took care of her full time. Through sheer resolve and familial responsibility, they appeared to believe that their useless daughter might somehow heal their perfect one's drug addiction. My mother genuinely sneered at my suggestion that addiction calls for expert medical help. Stop being dramatic, she advised. You've never been as strong as Maya. She will recover if her family provides her with some help. She is unique. She is not like other addicts. This was the direction of the conversation for nearly 2 hours. They took turns pointing the finger at me, downplaying how bad Maya's addiction was, and worrying about how to hide it from their friends. They never once showed sincere concern for Maya's welfare, or admitted that their pressure may have contributed to her demise. My father made one last remark before hanging up the phone, which solidified my choice of what to do next. Keep in mind that if you don't assist us with this, you're proving all we've ever said about you being of no use to this family, he continued. Without answering, I hung up, already making plans in my head. They wish to remain silent about this. Their reputation is a concern for them. Perhaps it's time for Boston's elite to meet the family they've long admired in person. I can't help but see the irony as I sit here figuring out what to do next. They need the daughter they cast aside to preserve the one they revere after spending years pulling me down to elevate Maya. However, I have another idea that will ultimately help them see the real consequences of their behavior. Shall I tell you my plan? Taking the high road isn't exactly what most people would think of doing, but perhaps it's not the best course of action this time around, given everything they've done. Watch this space to see what happens next. I can assure you that karma will soon make a stunning entrance in their meticulously planned life. Second update. I debated for a long time before deciding to contact Maya directly. Without our parents interfering, I wanted to hear her side of the tale. What transpired was painful and eye-opening. On the phone, Maya's voice was hardly recognizable. Weak, uncertain, and entirely different from the self-assured sister I recalled. She initially spoke in short, disjointed words, as though it took a great deal of work to put her ideas together. The entire story then slowly came to light. She didn't fall into addiction all at once. It began soon after I was humiliated by our parents at the promotion party. The weight of our parents' expectations and the burden of being the youngest senior partner became too much to bear. She admitted, I was frantically trying to prove I deserved the position by working 90-hour weeks. I had trouble falling asleep. Every case seemed like it might be the one in which I failed, where I would demonstrate my lack of competence. Seeing how worn out she was, one of the other partners gave her something to keep her advantage. Cocaine was the something in question. What began as a one-time boost to get through challenging instances turned into a daily requirement. Maya explained how she would plan her entire day to keep up the ideal facade while controlling her increasing dependence. She would plan court dates for the mornings when she was most lucid, attend lunch meetings that were really occasions to use, and progressively distance herself from everyone who may observe her decline. The most startling admission, however, came when Maya sobbed and admitted that it was also a turning point in her life to witness our parents make fun of me at her celebration. She wailed, I saw myself becoming them. I was so focused on maintaining this image of perfection that I stood there and let them destroy you. I've carried that guilt ever since. She disclosed how the unrelenting adulation from our parents had turned into a prison. The bar was increased with each success. The pressure to be flawless increased with each achievement. They didn't just ruin your life, she said in a whisper. They ruined mine too, just in a different way. The topic of discussion turned to her present circumstances. Her savings, her career, and her standing in the legal community are all gone. Our parents' resistance to allow her to get professional help, however, is what scares her the most. She said, "They keep saying they can handle it privately, but I know I need real treatment. I'm scared I'll die if I don't get help soon." Then Maya did something that surprised me. She expressed regret. Not just a shallow "I'm sorry," but a sincere admission of her responsibility for my suffering. She apologized for all the times she had taken sides with our parents, for all the times she had reveled in their admiration while they had denigrated me. In her own words, "You were always the stronger one. You built your life despite them, while I built mine to please them." Look where that got me. Neither of us missed the irony in her comment. Maya shared more details about our parents' present conduct while we spoke. More focused on maintaining appearances than obtaining her assistance, they have been micromanaging her deterioration. They've created elaborate lies to explain my absence from social events, Maya stated. They've even staged fake video calls, where I pretend to be working late at the office I no longer have access to. Finding out how they have been responding to her withdrawal attempts was the most upsetting aspect. They have seen it as a minor nuisance, rather than seeking medical care. When I experience severe symptoms, they give me sleeping pills and lock me in my old bedroom, she stated. They tell the housekeeping staff I have a bad flu. I overheard them discussing what to tell the country club members, Maya remarked, laughing bitterly. They were more worried about maintaining their standing in the club than whether I might need emergency medical care. I had a clear image of Maya's addiction and the poisonous familial dynamic that fueled it by the end of our talk. Our parents hadn't produced one successful and one unsuccessful daughter, though in separate ways, they had harmed us both. "I want to get proper help finally," Maya said, "but I'm terrified of standing up to them. They've controlled every aspect of my life for so long. I don't know how to defy them." I understood exactly what I had to do at that point. I had to change my original revenge plot. Indeed, our parents should be held accountable for their deeds. However, I also have to make sure Maya receives the much-needed assistance. I'm developing a new plan that will safeguard Maya's road to healing while also exposing our parents' destructive behavior. Now is the moment to demonstrate to them that their useless daughter is capable of handling any problem, even if it means destroying their valuable social standing in the process. I will describe my plan and how I plan to implement it in the upcoming update. Let's assume that our parents are going to realize that keeping up appearances shouldn't be their top priority at this time. Third update. My strategy was executed with precision and method, focusing on our parents' most prized possession, their position in Boston's affluent circles. With the church community, Phase 1 got underway. I secretly forwarded documents to the Senior Leadership Council of their Episcopal Church, including proof of Maya's current state, and a thorough letter detailing how our parents were deliberately delaying their daughter from obtaining life-saving medical care. I emphasized how they put appearances before their daughter's life by mentioning their refusal of the offer of the Swiss Rehabilitation Center. It happened just before the annual meeting of the church fundraising committee, which my mother had chaired for the previous 15 years. The council reacted quickly. In addition to removing her from the committee, they started a formal conversation regarding the Christian need to help family members in need. With several members of the church openly glancing at my parents' normal pew, which was noticeably empty, the Sunday sermon about pride coming before a fall was especially incisive. Phase 2 focused on their network of professional contacts. I methodically contacted important associates at Maya's previous legal practice, voicing my serious concerns regarding our parents' handling of the matter. The company immediately disassociated itself, already concerned about possible liabilities. Our parents' painstakingly constructed fiction about Maya continuing to work there was essentially destroyed when they released a formal statement stating that she had left months prior for personal reasons. The country club stage was especially fulfilling. All I had to do was make sure the appropriate individuals heard the appropriate conversations. Among the elite members of the club, gossip spread like wildfire. The absurdity of the situation was now being discussed in whispers by the same social circles that had laughed at my humiliation 3 years prior. My mother's valuable junior league connections provided the brilliant idea. The message was clear. Their place in Boston's social hierarchy was eroding. I made arrangements for their annual charity banquet, which was typically held at our parents' house, to be moved because of concerns about the home environment. I put the second phase of my plan into action as their meticulously planned social environment collapsed. I was able to get Maya a spot at a prestigious rehabilitation center in Arizona, away from Boston's prying eyes, by working with her old coworkers. It gave her the opportunity to heal free from the poisonous influence of our parents. The administrative director of the facility consented to list Maya under a false identity after learning about our parents' meddling in earlier attempts at rehabilitation. This made sure our parents couldn't interfere with or control her therapy. Maya's path to recovery from addiction and from our parents' oppressive expectations began when she wrote me a quick note upon arriving at the facility. "Thank you for being strong enough to do what I couldn't." As I had expected, our parents' response to their social collapse was just that. They kept calling me, alternating between angry calls and frantic pleas. Father's last voicemail was quite instructive. "How dare you destroy everything we built? We gave you life, and this is how you repay us." I sent a single text message in response. "Consider this my repayment for your years of app parenting. Your reputation is experiencing the same thing you did to my self-worth: systematic destruction. How does it feel to be seen as useless in your social circle?" Boston's affluent social circles are still feeling the effects. Our parents, who were once honored guests at all important social gatherings, are now discreetly denied invitations to important events. They get no response to their calls. They mysteriously lose their regular reservations for dinner at upscale eateries. Their new reality is the sidelong glances and whispers they have been trying so hard to escape. Maya's therapist at the rehab facility sent me an unexpected email last week. She revealed, with Maya's consent, that my sister is progressing remarkably, now that she is finally getting professional assistance and is free from our parents' toxic expectations. She is starting to realize how their fixation on perfection fueled her addiction. In addition, the therapist made a comment that made me cry. "It seems that Maya has a picture of us as kids on her bedside table. It was taken before our connection was ruined by our parents' expectations. She hopes to restore the sisterly connection we previously shared by looking at it every morning as inspiration for her recuperation." Unable to handle their embarrassment in Boston, our parents are said to have escaped to their Berkshire's vacation home. Things became worse after their last attempt at damage control, which involved sending a long email to their social circle saying they were misinterpreted. They were officially suspended from the country club after someone, not me, for once, leaked it to all of the members. One of my mother's oldest friends, who saw me humiliated at Maya's promotion celebration, wrote me a letter yesterday. She realized how the community had tolerated our parents' destructive behavior for years and expressed her sincere regret for not speaking out that evening. Letting someone face the consequences of their actions is sometimes the most loving thing we can do. She wrote at the end of her letter a quotation that encapsulated the situation well. "Some may argue that my retaliation was excessively severe and that I ought to have approached the matter more tactfully. However, I disagree. Our parents' reputation was cultivated over decades of violence and emotional abuse. They maintained control and imposed their perverted ideal of perfection by using their social position as a weapon. They are now going through the agonizing reality of being viewed as a letdown by their peers, just as they did to me." Maya's recuperation is still going well. She's beginning to envision a future free from the controlling influence of our parents, one in which she defines success according to her own standards rather than using their distorted definition. Together, we are gradually mending the harm our parents caused to our relationship. For my part, I've at last discovered tranquility. It turned out that the useless daughter was the one who could bring about both justice and salvation. I've demonstrated that the ability to stand up for what's right, even at great personal expense, is a better indicator of success than social standing or parental favor. At all costs, our parents sought to keep up appearances. They got what they wanted then. Everyone now recognizes them for who they truly are. I discovered my sister's secret income, property damage, and exploitation. So I kicked her out and sued for compensation. I don't know how to start this without seeming crappy, but here goes. For 6 years, my sister, Jess, 25, has lived with me, a 27-year-old professional. It started with me wanting to do the right thing as the older brother and spiraled from there. Context: Jess got pregnant at 19. I won't go into detail, but it wasn't good. She had little assistance, and our mother, who raised us as single parents, wasn't financially or emotionally able to help her. As the elder brother, I offered, "Come stay with me." I didn't think much of it. I had just acquired a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house, but it was mine. I was proud of my years-long savings for that house. Like a sturdy base, you know? Jess was meant to stay for a few months to figure out her life. I sometimes assisted with the baby at night and made her feel comfortable. A few months became a year, then 2, then 6. At least Jess wasn't worthless. She generally cleaned her portion of the house and helped with shopping and shared places when her first child became older. She never paid rent. Not once. At first, I didn't want to be that person, so I didn't ask her. When I heard she was a single parent, asking for money felt wrong. Her life became pleasant over time. While living here, she had a second child. Don't ask about the dad. And what started as a place to sleep became her life. My nephews, her boys, considered my house their home. I probably kept it going because I felt obligated to her. Jess and I had a difficult childhood. Our mom tried, but we were broke, and I always promised myself I'd improve. I'd help my family in need. Personally, the first prefer my nephews. They're good kids, despite their loudness and yard mess. About 2 years ago, I met Amy, my wife. Seriously, she's 26 and great. She understood Jess's position from the start, and we clicked. Amy hardly mentioned my sister living here for the first 2 years. She occasionally asked, "When do you think Jess will get her own place?" But was patient, because she understood it was complex. Amy moved in last year, changing things. I know, moving into a house with another woman and her 2 kids is hard. Jess and Amy were initially courteous, but there was unsaid tension. Amy felt that she couldn't claim the house since Jess had claimed her territory. This is where things went wrong. Gardening has always been Amy's passion. Growing up helping her grandma grow, she often remarked about how peaceful it was. Amy had been wanting to start a project for a year since moving in. We were talking about the house after dinner a few weeks ago, and Amy mentioned that she wanted to tear up part of the front yard and plant a spring garden. She had seen flowers, little shrubs, and a bench for us to sit. I like the sound. The only thing in our yard is grass and a few forlorn plants. I thought a garden would look better, and Amy was so enthused about it, so I didn't say no. We considered hiring contractors to remove the grass, prepare the soil, and lay out the space. Amy wanted to take a few days off work to supervise and ensure it was done right. I advised her to pursue the strategy because it was sound. In retrospect, I know what I did wrong. I should have told Jess the plan. My house is mine, so I don't have to explain what I do with it. However, Jess has lived here for 6 years, and her kids play in that yard often. Even though it's not her legal place, it's been part of her daily routine for so long that I should have warned her. Amy and I had strange schedules, so we scarcely saw Jess that week. She's generally around while I'm at work, and when I get home, the boys are asleep and Jess is relaxing. I didn't think calling attention to the garden was necessary, because I thought she wouldn't care. A stupid assumption, looking back. On the scheduled contractor day, Amy took the day off to handle things. I was at work as normal, unaware of what was about to happen. Construction crews arrived early and tore up the front yard. Amy accompanied them to ensure proper execution. Amy said it was fine at first. She said, "Good morning" to Jess, who hardly looked at her, and went about her business. Jess then observed what was happening. She supposedly lost it when she witnessed workmen breaking up her kids' daily play grass. Amy said the ranting started suddenly. Jess stormed out in her pajamas, wanting to know what was going on. She said Amy ruined the yard and took her kids' only play space. Amy tried to tell Jess that she and I had discussed it, but she refused. Amy reported Jess shouting. She screamed at the contractors to halt and told them not to touch anything. Amy said, "Actually, you don't get to make that call. This is our home." Jess replied, "I've lived here for 6 years. You can't rip apart my home either." Things got out of hand then. Our neighbor Karen, in her 40s, heard the ranting and intervened. Karen and Jess are friendly. Her kids play with my nephews, and they bond over being single moms. Later, Amy told me Karen came over and immediately took Jess's side, questioning what the workers were doing and why Jess didn't know. Amy tried to stay cool, but Karen ignored her. She called the cops. Police? Yes? Thinking about that, I still can't believe it. Karen reported unlicensed laborers messing up the yard to 911. She claimed Amy couldn't change anything because the owner wasn't home. The police arrived quickly. I presume in a quiet neighborhood like ours, they had nothing else to do. And things grew even crazier. Amy tried to explain that she had permission because this is her house, and we're married. But the officers told her to go for the night because I wasn't present to confirm. They let her take an overnight bag and then escorted her out of our residence. I was at work and unavailable when I learned about this. Our IT facility's warehouse zone prevents me from carrying my phone during shifts. Not until I checked my phone on break and saw roughly a dozen missed calls from Amy did I realize what had transpired. I felt very stupid. I left work early, got in my car, and drove home for an hour trying to understand what happened. That night, I felt like my brain was short-circuiting at home. Jess was sitting on the couch, calmly scrolling through her phone as I entered the house. Meanwhile, Amy was absent. My sister acted like she was the victim when my wife was evicted. Where's Amy? I asked, trying to speak clearly. Jess innocently looked up. She left. She remarked, as if it were plain. Police made her do it. Her tone immediately irritated me. Not yet yelling, but near. Why did Jess call the cops on her? What the hell is happening? She then defensively began her story. She claimed she had no option. Amy and the workmen were destroying her kids' play environment without her knowledge. So she acted. She talked about living here for 6 years and how Amy changed everything without appreciating her. You don't get it, Jess remarked. This has been my home for years. You can't rip up the yard without my permission. What I heard was unbelievable. After years of supporting my sister, who has lived here rent-free, was acting like she owned my house. Your home, I said. Jessica, this isn't your home. You live here because I let you. I helped you for years, and you call the cops and kick out my wife. Then she played the victim. She cried. She said her kids loved the yard and had nowhere else to play. I loved my nephews, but her response was terrible. You screamed at Amy, I replied, raising my voice. You shamed her in front of workers, got the neighbor involved, and called the police. Someone does that? Jess got up and yelled back, attempting to match my energy. You and Amy didn't even tell me. I had to find out when strangers were digging up the yard. You don't just get to change everything without talking to me first. I've lived here for 6 years. I have a say in this. I stopped. Her statement was so ridiculous that I paused mid-sentence. You have a say, Jess? You don't pay rent. You don't own this house. You've been living here because I've been helping you out. She said it, the line that boiled my blood. I have tenant rights. You can't just do whatever you want anymore. I froze. What did you just say? Jess crossed her arms and repeated it, quieter but firmer. I have tenant rights. I've lived here for 6 years. You can't just kick me out or change things without notice. Legally, I have rights too. I had to leave. I couldn't look at her. Sitting on the porch, I tried to relax. I was angry, not afraid, so my hands shook. Amy called when I was outside. I could tell she was upset while staying with her sister. I can't believe your sister did that to me, she gasped. I'm your wife, and the police made me leave our house. Hearing her pain enraged me. I'll handle it, I assured her. This is the last straw, Amy. Jess has to go. I went inside later. Still sitting, Jess pretended nothing had happened. I was honest this time. You must leave, I said. She appeared surprised at me. What? Kicking me out over a garden? No, I answered. I'm kicking you out because of how you treated Amy. I'm kicking you out because you think you have more of a right to this house than my wife does. This is my home, Jess, and you crossed a line. She cried again, saying I was cruel, that she had nowhere to go, and that I chose Amy before my sister. And maybe I was. But I didn't care then. I wouldn't let her disrespect my wife and behave like she owned the place. I set a deadline. You have 60 days to find somewhere else. I'm serious. I'll help you pack. I'll help you find a place, but you're moving out. Jess slammed her door as she stormed to her room. I stood there exhausted for a moment. I saw a lawyer the next day about tenant rights. I didn't want to be surprised if Jess fought me. The lawyer claimed Jess may have residence rights because she's lived there so long. But since there's no lease and she's never paid rent, she might be evicted easily. Just give her written notice. Yes, I did that. I printed an official notification and gave it to Jess that night. You're really doing this? She asked, crying. Yes, I answered. It's time, Jess. Felt awful. Yes, I did. I adore my sister. It wasn't simply the yard anymore. Respect, boundaries, and putting my wife first were key. Amy received my full story via text that night. When she returned home the next morning, I saw how relieved she was to be home, and I knew I had done the right thing. I've initiated official eviction, and I'm not backing down. Maybe this makes me a lousy brother, but I'm done. Any developments will be posted. Update 1. My last post on handing my sister eviction papers was a week ago. Things have risen unexpectedly, but I'm addressing it systematically and obtaining pleasant outcomes. First, Jess's reply surprised me. Instead of accepting reality, she fought back legally. She engaged a cheap consultation lawyer, who assured her she had squatters' rights. Her lawyer wrote me a threatening letter, alleging she had equal property rights after 6 years of residence. They didn't realize I'd already consulted an eviction-specialized real estate attorney. Jess has fundamental tenant protections, but her situation is weak, my lawyer said. She has never paid rent, and we have no written agreements governing her stay. All paperwork lists me as the sole owner and my wife, Amy, as a legal resident. Better yet, my lawyer said, her garden axe helped us. It shows antagonistic behavior toward legitimate property owners. What about Karen, the neighbor who phoned the police? It seems she's generating more difficulty. She wrote on our neighborhood Facebook page that I'm evicting a single mother and her children. She tried to arrange a protest outside our house. My lawyer wrote her a cease and desist letter saying that her activities could be harassment and interference with court procedures, which backfired catastrophically. The most intriguing development was Karen's unexpected police visit. Falsifying police reports of unlicensed buildings might have consequences. She may be charged with making a fraudulent police complaint. Her attitude changed so rapidly afterward. She hasn't spoken in days. Since this began, neighborhood dynamics have changed substantially. Some neighbors initially supported Jess, likely because she had portrayed herself as a suffering single mother for years. After Karen's failed protest and Jess's financial predicament became public, people's views changed. I was surprised to learn that Jess has worked part-time for 2 years while stating she couldn't afford to move out. My lawyer subpoenaed her bank documents for eviction, and she's been saving a lot, but not for moving out. She's been on exotic holidays with friends while telling me she's poor. When Jess played her last card yesterday, things got interesting. Her lawyer made a settlement offer to depart peacefully provided I gave her $10,000 in relocation help. They said she deserved recompense for her long-term investment in the property because she cleaned and maintained the dwelling. Perfect response from my lawyer. He sent a precise estimate of market rate rent for 6 years, utilities she never paid, property tax she never paid, maintenance expenditures I paid alone, and current legal bills. The total exceeded $100,000. In exchange for her prompt departure, he graciously waived these charges. Jess's lawyer suddenly lost interest in financial claims. Through this process, the family's reaction has changed. Many, including our mom, were initially conflicted. Most of them understood my viewpoint after seeing the garden incident police report and Jess's secret savings. Mother contacted Jess to say she was out of line. Jessica didn't expect the family to support me. That was a turning moment. All along, Amy has been really supportive. She's been helping me document everything. and she pointed out to me that the garden incident security camera footage exposes Jess and Karen's behavior. This helped our legal case immensely. Positively, Amy's garden project is progressing on a different time frame. We recruited new contractors. The old ones didn't want to return, and work will begin when Jess leaves. Amy is working with a landscape designer to improve her plan. Kids are the only thing that bothers me. Jess is using them as emotional leverage because they don't comprehend. My nephew asked me yesterday why we no longer love them, presumably from his mother. Though it breaks my heart, I remember myself that Jess caused this. Although the 60-day notice period continues, my lawyer feels we're in a solid position. Jess's tenant rights claims have backfired. By identifying herself as a renter, she's also acknowledged me as her landlord, giving me additional legal right to evict her. Jess has started packing, but she's being subtle. I think she's finally realizing it, especially since she lost the family's sympathies. Fighting this would be costly and pointless, her lawyer undoubtedly told her. I'll update when things change substantially. I expect Jess to depart early to preserve face, or stay, until the last minute out of spite, given the situation. Either way, we're ready. After seeing how quickly her legal threats failed, I doubt she will go that far. Update 2. Karen's legal issues grew. After the police investigated her bogus report, she faces minor charges. She apologized and asked us to withdraw the allegations, but the prosecutor continued. It appears she's done this with other neighbors. The most satisfying development was from our homeowner's insurance company. They pursued Karen for higher premiums and legal fees after learning about the garden incident and bogus police report. We're using her large payout to fund a better garden project than planned. Jess made one more desperate try 2 weeks before eviction. She tried to claim first possession, claiming half ownership from her 6-year residence. When our lawyer supplied the considerable record of her rent-free status and my constant ownership claim, her new lawyer, the third she's hired, quickly dropped that claim. Family dynamics have flipped in our favor. The cousins told us Jess had been conducting a modest online business from our house for a year, which she never acknowledged while citing financial trouble. She registered her business at our location but never reported the income. The authorities received this information. We hired expert movers and security on moving day to guarantee everything went properly. Jessica tried to stir controversy one final time by claiming she owned some of our stuff. Our lawyer briefed movers simply referenced our itemized inventory and photos from when she initially moved in to establish everything was mine. Her attempt to harm the house before departing sealed her destiny. She thought she was smart by loosening cabinet handles and poking tiny holes in window screens. She didn't understand that our new security system recorded everything. Our lawyer will undoubtedly sue her for damages using this footage. The hardest thing was kids. My nephew wrote a sorrowful note that he would miss his home on moving day. Jess never opened a savings account for her kids' schooling, despite her secret income. Eventually, they'll realize their uncle cared. Amy's garden project is underway. The contractors began work the day after Jess left, and the transformation is stunning. Our modest play area for neighboring kids will be supervised, proving we're not the villains Jess painted us as. The neighborhood's response to the truth is overwhelming. Many neighbors told instances of Jess's manipulation throughout the years. One elderly couple said she borrowed money from them monthly for the kids' medical bills. A lawyer is helping them collect those cash. Karen was finally humiliated when she defended her actions at a neighborhood association meeting. Another neighbor showed her interference and other disagreements. She was expelled from Neighborhood Watch and barred from community leadership. The house is quieter, organized, and ours for the first time. Repainted the walls, fixed Jess's damaged carpets, and put up my dream home office. With a complex watering system and seasonal flower rotation, Amy's garden is becoming a neighborhood attraction. The makeover is so spectacular that a local gardening group wants to include it in their annual tour. Our legal win was greater than expected. In the final court hearing, Jess's illicit commercial activities were highlighted. The judge was harsh on her using our address for business registration and taxes. The judgment upheld our eviction. and awarded property damage and legal fees. The judge's closing statements about familial goodwill misuse were pleasing. Community opinion has changed drastically. The conflict originally kept our next-door neighbors away, but they recently organized a cookout and apologized for not addressing Karen's false tale sooner. They had comparable manipulation experiences with Karen and Jess, demonstrating a trend we hadn't understood. The most shocking part is how this experience has strengthened some family relationships and severed harmful ones. Our cousins, who revealed Jess's secret business, visit often. They've helped us document everything for legal purposes and supported Amy's garden initiative. Our mom is at peace with the outcome after initially struggling. She recently informed me that seeing Amy and I handle things with respect and legality taught her that tough love is sometimes needed. She now visits regularly to help Amy with the garden and enjoy our tranquil atmosphere. We received an unexpected letter from Jess's oldest child last week. He wrote to apologize for some of his move-related comments while staying with our aunt for the summer. It was written in his own words without his mother's influence, giving us hope that we may re-establish that relationship, even if Jess remains estranged. The restraining orders against Jess and Karen were approved last month, adding security and peace of mind. The judge said, "Our thorough documentation and security footage made it one of the best prepared cases she has seen." Our lawyer's final report had intriguing figures. Nearly $150,000 was spent on rent, utilities, and damages over 6 years. A large percentage of this cash was awarded in the judge's final order, although we doubt we'll see it. But having the judgment on record feels good. I regret condoning Jess's actions for 6 years, but terminating it was right. Sometimes doing the right thing involves being someone else's villain. Amy and I are finally enjoying our home as we should, and our legal protections ensure Jess can never do this again. For comfortable situations, document everything. Hire a qualified lawyer, and don't let emotional manipulation take over your property rights. The preceding few months were difficult, but perseverance paid off. Our home is finally ours, and justice was more rewarding than I expected. Finally, thanks to the Reddit community, I survived this process, thanks to your comments on my earlier writings. You all gave me great legal advice, and your tales helped me feel less alone. Many thanks to those who suggested the security cameras. They were essential evidence. This community's insight and support helped us win justice. Please pardon me as I help Amy with her new butterfly garden section. When you have your own space, you can do incredible things. Evicted by my parents, I secretly bought their house and tripled the rent to rewrite my own destiny. Things began to go downhill or uphill, depending on your perspective. I worked part-time at a low-paying grocery store at 22 to finish my degree. Tom and Linda, my parents, pressured me like they owned my life. Every day, they pushed me toward their ideal life. They thought they knew best, yet didn't know my wishes. I stealthily eat my mom's overcooked meatloaf at dinner on Thursdays. Though it felt like chewing cardboard, I didn't say anything for fear of a sermon on my ungratefulness. Dad abruptly asks, "How's that business degree?" in his usual concerned dad manner. Though preparing, I knew this talk would happen. My stomach fell as my heart raced. Rip off the bandage. I set my fork down, staring at the clump of peas I'd been pushing around my plate like a 5-year-old. About that, I shakily responded, "I've contemplated changing majors." Room fell silent. The hallway clock ticked. Then I knew what was coming. Changing majors? My dad nearly gags on food. Only when angry would he glow scarlet. "Yeah, I want to switch to computer science," I said, trying to communicate clearly. It felt like a firing squad. Before I finished, my mom answered sarcastically. "Jake, thinking never been your strong suit," she joked, smiling tightly. We all knew it wasn't. She often jokes, pretending to laugh. Sat there swallowing rage. I wanted to yell at them and tell them they were wrong, but I knew better. There would be more ranting, and I didn't want an argument. Dad continued. His fork shook the plates as it hit the table. "Computer science. Are you crazy? Business makes money. That foolish hobby is ruining your future." Tried to explain. "It's not a pastime, Dad. Like it and think I can do well." "You think?" He disconnected again. Passion costs nothing, Jake. You're reckless. Think forward instead of doing what you want now. My mom agreed, feeding the fire. No more childhood. Don't play with your future. They didn't care about my wishes. As a project, any deviation from their design meant ruining it. Nobody considered that I might know what was best for me. After dinner, I collapsed on my bed after slamming the door like a burden on my chest, calling Ashley on my phone. She alone understood my condition. How did it go? She asked, knowing the outcome. Like a freaking disaster, I murmured, rubbing my eyes. I told them, and they went berserk. Like I told them, I was skipping off to join a circus. She responded by sighing. Jake, defend yourself. Your life, not theirs. You owe nothing. Yes, but they're my parents. Not that easy. I get it, she muttered. But Jake, you're 22. No more childhood. Own your life or they'll run it for you. While staring at the ceiling, I realized she was right. I should act like a grown-up. The next morning, I felt dread and resolve as I informed them honestly that they could no longer dominate my life. My pulse raced as I went downstairs and discovered them watching TV in the living room. Mom, Dad, we need to talk, I said shakily but firmly. After my dad muted the TV, everybody looked at me like they expected big news, which it was. Switching to computer science. Dad frowned. You're not, I persisted this time. I chose this as an adult. I hoped they would give me it, but Mom stood up with her arms crossed. If you're an adult, you can support yourself, she said coldly. You have 24 hours to pack and leave. I was riveted, like my brain couldn't comprehend what she said. What? I succeeded? You can't be serious. My dad snaps. Oh, we're serious. You want to decide? Fine. You're doing it alone. I forget my walk back to my room, but I felt betrayed, like they were looking for an excuse to push me out. I was their son, but they treated me like garbage. I called my best friend Mike from my room without trying to talk well. I said, dude, they kicked me out, shaking my hands. I don't know what to do. Mike immediately said, pack your stuff, man. Stay with me. I discovered it while packing my clothing in a duffel bag. My parents threw me away like trash. Despite how bizarre it sounds, I felt relieved. They no longer controlled me. Not sure what that meant. I slept in Mike's house trying to figure out what happened after getting expelled, but it felt like my life had changed. From fighting with my parents about my major to being homeless felt unreal, like someone else was experiencing it. I didn't mind Mike's one-bedroom apartment that smelled like stale pizza and exercise socks, because I had a roof and a friend who wouldn't ask me to leave. I couldn't crawl to my parents for help because it was too cramped. Every movement made Mike's old couch rattle where I slept. Every time I finished my homework, my mind would replay what happened. It seemed like my mind wouldn't let me forget I didn't have a home. My savings were draining fast, and I needed to work more. I couldn't balance 2 jobs, school, and life decisions. Ashley recommended we eat lunch at a cheap sandwich cafe near Mike's to relax after she couldn't fix my problem. As I hadn't eaten much since leaving home, I figured going out might help. How are you doing? She inquired, eating her sandwich. I shrugged. Honestly, not good. I can't concentrate at school, and my money is running out. I doubt I can continue. She gave me the compassionate look everyone has given me since I told them what happened. Jake, you're trying. Just a blip. Joyless laughter. Yes, a mountain-sized bump. She held my hand across the table. You'll understand. You've always been brilliant, even if your parents don't know. Her kind words didn't change the fact that I was stuck in a situation I couldn't escape. I felt like I was treading water to avoid drowning. After lunch, I worked on my assignments at Mike's. But as I looked at the computer screen, I realized I was getting behind. My grades were decreasing, and I was considering dropping out. I didn't want to, but other options were running out. After several weeks of no improvement, my money fell, and I realized I had to choose. Mike could only cover so much, and I couldn't keep freeloading on him. Leaving college seemed like giving up all I'd worked for. Signing the paperwork in the dean's office made me feel like a failure. My aim of being the first in my family to graduate college was disappearing like everything else. After leaving that office, I realized I had no degree, strategy, or money. I gazed at my phone on Mike's couch that night, unsure what to do. Ashley always called to check on me. "Now the plan?" she whispered. "I keep looking for work, but nothing comes through, like every door is closing on me." My caller hesitated, clearly trying to cheer me up. "You won't give up?" "I don't have a choice," I said, trying to speak clearly. Today, I dropped out. "Oh, Jake," she said, "the end is not here. Find something. I know you will." I wanted to trust her, but was losing hope. For days, I applied for every job I could find. But Sunnyside Restaurant, a decrepit restaurant that hadn't been cleaned since the 1980s, was the only one that offered anything. Flipping burgers and mopping floors was better than nothing since I needed money. I had something despite the long hours and minimal money. Earl, my manager, barked directives like boot camp as I pounded grease-covered burgers on the grill. Maybe Earl witnessed my hard work. He was tough and only cared about money. After a month at the diner, Earl approached me during a break. "Nice work ethic, child. Want more hours?" My forehead was sweaty, so I wiped it off to look engaged. "My friend needs a better paying night guard at this downtown office building. You in?" No consideration required. Yes, I'm in. Flipping burgers by day and guarding an empty building at night. Though unglamorous, it was something. I stopped affording sleep and was exhausted most nights, barely able to open my eyes. But I had to survive. Ashley kept sending me links to tech internships to get me back on track, but I didn't have time or energy to apply. I live for survival now. Every night, as I sat in that dark, empty office building staring at the city's flashing lights, I wondered, how did my life become this way? A few months earlier, I had aspirations and a future. Now I was surviving, one shift at a time. The worst part was seeing no way two jobs were hell. The cafe was filthy, and the nights in that empty office building were mind-numbing. I lived in a beat-up knapsack, slept 4 hours a night, and sipped energy drinks like water. I was making money. Not much, but enough to keep me going. Mike didn't say anything, but I think he was glad I could help with rent. I didn't want to be the guy freeloading off my closest friend as my life went apart. So I handed him everything. A random meat things changed quickly when this guy came in for lunch while flipping burgers at the diner. I don't know if it was chance or the universe providing me a break. First, I didn't notice, just another customer. He looked fatigued, like the rest of us who worked too many hours for inadequate pay. After supper, he paid at the counter and gazed at the computer screen behind the register as I gave him his change. I practiced coding on break to keep sharp. He asked casually but suspiciously, "You're into coding?" I nodded, trying not to look thrilled. I taught myself. Hopefully, it will be a career. I could have something for you. My organization requires entry-level IT professionals. Not fancy, but a start. I blink, questioning what I heard. Seriously? Yes. He shrugged. "Send me your resume. I'll represent you." I accepted his business card shaking, hoping for a bit of hope after months. That night, I ignored my double shift exhaustion and started my laptop resume, which was imperfect but something. I wrote Mike before overthinking it and trying not to get hopeful. Turning point. After a few days, I believed he was being nice and I wouldn't be called. One afternoon, while working my night shift in that dreary abandoned office building, my phone buzzed. It was a company email. I hesitated to open the screen before responding with an interview invitation. It was shocking to go from flipping burgers and guarding vacant buildings to perhaps working in it. I rode the bus to work after stealing Mike's fine clothing and joining a modest, unassuming business that appeared like a new planet after a basic interview. Trevor from the diner greeted me at the door and introduced me to Tina, his supervisor. Tina was fierce but fair. I informed her I had self-taught coding and it without a degree. She was first disappointed by my small efforts, but she then asked me to fix a technical issue promptly, which I had never done. I panicked, but then I remembered all those late evenings I spent training and coding challenges for fun. I exhaled slowly and worked, trying not to feel pressurized. After I finished, Tina nodded and gazed at Trevor without saying much. She said, "He's got potential. Give him a shot." Despite feeling like my heart was ready to explode, I tried to stay cool. New beginning the following week. I started as an entry-level person. It wasn't glamorous, but I didn't care. For the first time in months, I wasn't selling burgers or guarding scary office buildings at 3 a.m. I was doing something I enjoyed for the first time in months, and Tina and Trevor patiently taught me and encouraged me to study. Not being held hand through everything was perfect. To prevent losing this opportunity, I worked at the startup all day and went to the diner or office at night. Sleep was rare, and most mornings I felt like a car had hit me. I couldn't have survived without Ashley, who gave me job leads and checked on the startup. She reminded me that I was building something for myself when I felt like I was falling apart. After months of beating, I broke. I couldn't work 2 jobs and be sane, so I quit. Earl was sad but understood. "Good luck, kid," he said earnestly. "You work hard. You'll be fine." It was amazing to leave the diner. I worked security nights when I wasn't at the business, but I wasn't burning out as fast. Over time, I dedicated every free moment to it, acquiring new skills, performing projects, and absorbing knowledge. I was constructing something genuine. Mine. I wondered if I was following a pipe dream, but every time I overcame a challenge or solved a problem that had stumped me for hours, that spark returned. Long missing fire. It took time for me to see my future again. I wanted my future, not my parents'. First time in years, that was enough. Some months into the new job, things felt different. Not bad, just different from what I had felt in a while. Finally doing something I liked. I wasn't going to a dead-end job. Code and fix it were fun, but not glamorous. Get something I worked hard for. Tina went to my workstation one afternoon while I was programming. I loved her directness. She said, "Jake, I've been following your work for months. You have promised yet are holding back." I glanced at her, shocked. "Holding back? You mean what?" She crossed her arms and looked like she knew the answer, but wanted me to say it. "You're talented, but you're cautious and adhere to familiarity. You lack risk-taking and pushing. Being comfortable is good, but comfort doesn't work in business." I was unclear what to say. She was right. I was doing the work, but not well. After everything, I was grateful to be stable and not mess up. Tina replied, "Look, Jake, you're good, but you need to improve to stand out. Try scary projects. You grow that way." I nodded, still understanding her words. This wasn't my parents' counsel to quit wasting my ability. This individual saw it and encouraged me. I followed her advice and volunteered for harder jobs I wasn't sure I could handle. I occasionally felt overwhelmed, but solving an issue was worth it. Tina handed me a big client job. I was scared, since it was more responsibility than I'd ever had, but I was excited to prove I could do it. After weeks of late nights, weekends, and free time to perfect the project, I felt like I had run a marathon. I was exhausted, but I felt stronger. Several days later, Tina invited me into her office. I sat down, anxious about making a mistake. She acted swiftly. "Jake, your client liked your work. Every suggestion you made is being implemented." Unknowingly, I exhaled. "Really?" She nodded with a little smile. "You did great. Keep going and you'll succeed." Leave her office, and I felt 10 feet tall. I thrived for the first time in forever, and saw a future of building instead of scraping by. As I pushed harder, I understood how much I was holding back, not only in my career, but in life. This cloud lifted, and I could see what I could do if I stopped afraid. Mistakes were inevitable, but they taught and progressed me. Ashley was always supportive, but she suddenly seemed proud of me. Instead of grumbling about my poor work or money, I'd talk about my new project or something fantastic I learned at dinner. She'd listen, really listen, like she could see I was on my way. After a long week at work, we sat on her couch one night. I was exhausted, but happy. She smiled. She said, "I always knew you'd get here. Maybe not as planned, but you're doing it. You make it happen." I didn't know how to answer. She was with me through the worst, when I didn't know whether I'd make rent or where my next salary would come from. She made me feel safe and valued. Hearing her say that, I understood how lucky I was. Thanks, I said forcefully. I don't think I'd have made it this far without you. You would have? She laughed, shaking her head. A push was all you needed. She may have been right, but her presence helped. Then things got better. I took on more duties and improved, and others noticed. Every time I finished one of Tina's harder assignments, I felt more confident. For the first time in years, I felt secure. I stopped security and wasn't making much money, but I wasn't afraid about my next meal. Tina summoned me into her office again one afternoon. I expected another extravagant project, but she had a serious look I hadn't seen before. She said, "Jake, I want to talk to you about your future here." Calmly but directly. Unsure of the direction, I arched an eyebrow. "Okay." She reclined in her chair. "You've done well in recent months. I think you're ready for more. I wish to make you full-time." After she started, I sat there trying to process it. Full-time, the dream? No more juggling jobs or scraping by? I don't even know what to say. I smiled. Just say yes. Yes, I did. After leaving that office, I felt lighter. All the strain, sleepless nights, and self-doubt were worth it. I arrived, though not as planned, and that felt good. Being promoted to full-time was like visiting a new planet. For the first time, I felt like I was doing something meaningful for myself and others, without working a miserable side job. It was steady. After attaining that milestone, work got frantic. Tina meant it when she said I'd get additional responsibilities. I led teams for the first time and managed impossible deadlines on larger projects. My to-do list sometimes made me worry how I would do it all, but I had to. Every day was a challenge, but it was the kind that made me feel alive. It was significant to be trusted to do the job while still learning. Tina summoned me into her office again one afternoon. Every time she did, I felt like I was in school waiting to pass or fail a test. She looked serious, and I wondered if I'd done something wrong. She added, "Jake, I've got another project for you," pushing a folder over the desk. I took it and flipped through. The new customer was a big company modernizing its infrastructure. Bigger than anything I'd done before. My stomach flipped when excited and scared. "This is a lot," I said, trying to seem confident but not arrogant. "I think you're ready." Tina nods. "I need you to guide the organization through this major undertaking." Guide it? I was shocked. I worked hard, but heading a project looked advanced. I said, "I won't let you down," feeling her faith. "I know you won't," she said, smiling briefly. Next week was my busiest. I worked nights and weekends at work, making sure everything was fine. My staff was excellent, but I couldn't let anyone down under pressure. Ashley was wonderful, although I was rarely around and a zombie. She brought takeout to work, sat with me, and reminded me to take breaks. "You're going to burn out if you don't slow down," she warned. I adored this idea and thought it would change my career and life if I succeeded. I had to prove myself, not Tina or the firm, that I could handle this. I barely slept the night before the client presentation, mentally double and triple checking everything to make sure there were no loose ends. I felt like all my tension and anxiety from the year had built up to this moment, and I was about to do something significant. The next morning, I entered the boardroom to find the clients in suits and ties, looking serious. I put up my presentation to calm my nerves, but it seemed like my career hinged on this meeting. Tina sat at the head of the table watching me. I breathed deeply, comforted myself, and started the lecture. I stumbled over a few words and slides, but I answered their questions, explained the idea, and showed why they required this update. During what seemed like an eternity, no one talked. They scanned the documentation and whispered. My stomach flipped, and I half expected them to take everything apart. The IT department chief said, "This looks good," nodding. "We'll proceed." I was astonished and wanted to jump up and fist pump like a fool, but I nodded like it was just another day at work. Yelling with joy, Tina took me aside after the meeting. "Great work," she said, beaming. "You've earned this." Her praise, or the fact that I finished my largest assignment, hit me harder. I felt like I'd passed an unseen finish line. After months of work, I left the office that night, relieved. I didn't care that I'd probably be back there in the morning working on something else. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was where I should be. On my way home, I excitedly called Ashley. "We did it, babe. The presentation was well received. We're proceeding?" Pride showed in her laughter. "You would, I knew. So proud of you, Jake." Hearing that made it real. I wasn't the lost, fearful kid who'd been kicked out of his parents' house. I'd built something for myself on my terms. There was less uncertainty about the future. I thrived, not just survived. And that feeling? It was all worth it. I went from struggling to excelling in it a few years after that big job assignment. And I was surprised when I started my own firm. After working for a while, I had a good reputation, saved money, and made connections. So I was ready to jump. Starting my own business was hard. There were restless nights, countless paperwork, and constant worry that everything might fail. I felt this was my calling, so I kept going. I got contracts, built a small but solid crew, and the company took off. After 2 years, we made more money than I expected. I didn't serve burgers or protect vacant buildings. I grew my firm every month. I had built it. Ashley and I contemplated buying a house when my company took off. After years of renting, we wanted our own home. We looked at ads, attended weekend open houses, and fantasized about our ideal home. Seeing my boyhood house, which my parents still live in, for sale prevented me from surfing real estate sites. I was surprised to discover their house for sale. I hadn't spoken to them in years and didn't follow their life. I clicked on the advertisement to learn more. Their landlord had sold the property at a discount compared to surrounding homes. I suddenly had a crazy idea. Buy the house. Who buys their parents' house after eviction? It seemed petty, but I could. But they didn't know I had money or was considering buying a property. This could be my chance to reclaim control over a situation that had kept me powerless for years. I called my realtor and placed a bid without hesitation. It was inexpensive, and I had the money to accomplish it. A few weeks later, the purchase closed, and I acquired my childhood home. Now things get interesting. The property manager called me the day after the deal. "The tenants are asking to meet the new owner," said. "They want to discuss the rent and some issues they've been having." I grinned internally. Good things were coming. Not telling them. I told property management to make the appointment. The plan was in my brain. After parking my car in front and knocking like a landlord, Dad answered the door. He was surprised, but didn't recognize me because we hadn't seen each other in years. I didn't appear like the guy who left their house with a duffel bag and no plan. "We're here to meet the landlord," he exclaimed. "That's me," I said, entering like I owned it. He blinks in amazement. "Wait, what? You're the landlord?" "Yeah," I said, trying not to laugh. "I bought the place." My mom came from the living room wide-eyed. "Jake," she shouted. "Why are you here?" I smiled and leaned against the wall. "Well, I'm your landlord now." They were speechless, still absorbing the fact that the boy they kicked out years before owned their house. Though I wasn't celebrating, it seemed fair. Business was my obligation. I began. So, breaking the awkward quiet about the rent. They stared at me unprepared. I stated, "I'm tripling it," calmly. Dad was stunned. "Triple it? You're kidding." I replied, "Oh, I'm dead serious." Rent is rising a lot. Mom shook and reasoned with me, "Jake. We can't afford that." "You know we can't." I shrugged. "That's not my issue. You can pay the new rent or move. Up to you." Though tough, I wouldn't back down. Years ago they kicked me out, so now I set the terms. The stunned couple may have realized they had no choice but to stand there with no credit and no options. I left after an awkward talk to let them figure things out. I drove away feeling satisfied, vindicated, and hollow. I proved them wrong and succeeded despite everything they did to me. But as I drove away from that house, I realized that rent hikes and property ownership couldn't fix it. This was about release, not revenge. I wouldn't lower rent. My parents sent me away after having my sister. They called me 12 years later to prove they're good parents after she failed. My parents gave up on me at 8 and sent me to live with my aunt. Before I turned 8, I knew they didn't like me. They basically had to deal with me. They had me in their early 20s, just starting their professions, and I watched them struggle to construct a life while raising me. Though I recently realized this, I think they resented me. I didn't understand why they hated me then. I spent my early years trying to please them, but nothing worked. My emotions were ignored. However, they behaved differently around friends and family. They couldn't let anyone know how horrible things were. They even convinced me to keep quiet out of fear of making them dislike me more. Years passed, and my mental and emotional health declined. I struggled in school and behaved out. I don't blame myself for my difficult childhood. My behavior would have changed if my parents had treated me better. They scolded, grounded, and punished me, but failed. After my teachers complained about my behavior and grades, I misbehaved more to seek their attention. If being good fails, try being bad. This scheme failed. Mom got pregnant again around my 8th birthday. My parents were thrilled for the first time in years. I didn't understand the announcement at my birthday celebration. I learned weeks later. As my mom packed my luggage, my dad sat me down and told me I was going to live with my aunt. He said it was for my own good because I wasn't doing well there. Though young, I wasn't foolish. I knew they were dumping me. Replacement was coming with another baby. I had tantrums after being heartbroken. I wanted to stay with my family, friends, and parents, even if they mistreated me. They didn't care about my tantrums. They sent me to my aunt's house out of state. I felt miserable on the trip and begged my parents to let me stay. I committed to improve my grades and behavior, but they were set. I hadn't considered that this might not be about my grades or behavior back then. Even if I was the best kid, they might have hated me. My parents helped me settle in at my aunt's house for a few days, but I was still angry. However, my aunt helped me adjust. She may be the kindest and most loving person ever. My aunt, my dad's older sister and the oldest of 4 siblings, raised me because she had never married or had children. Although her siblings worked elsewhere, she worked on the farm their parents left them. She knew I was upset about moving in, so she reassured me that everything would be great and that I would enjoy the place once I got to know it. Her remarks helped me greatly. After 2 days, my parents left, and I broke down. My aunt was my only support. She constantly contacted my parents to talk to me to feel better, but they rarely responded. For 2 weeks, I cried, and my aunt stayed with me. Eventually, I felt better. Living with her was so much better that I stopped missing my parents after a few months. I worked on the farm and went to school, and I was doing better. I had many friends, managed academics, and liked my teachers. My life improved once my parents sent me abroad. Even though we saw one other on vacations, I recognized I was better off without them. I was a troublesome youngster who needed a change of atmosphere, so my parents told my aunt I was moving in. After a few months, I told her my parents never wanted me, treated me horribly, and thanked her for taking me in. After that, my aunt treated my parents differently. She grew colder and distant. After that, we saw them at family parties and functions. But we haven't played much in 12 years. My happiness is greater without them, and they don't care. I have no relationship with my 12-year-old sister, which is probably best. Other family members say she's not growing up pleasant. She's one of the school's worst troublemakers at 12, and has a bad attitude. My parents have that issue, not me. My life is going fine. I'm in college to get a business degree, so I can run the farm when my aunt retires. Since college is close, I can visit home every weekend, which is convenient. My parents called my aunt last weekend when I was at home because they couldn't reach me directly. First time in almost 12 years, we had a proper phone discussion. Their request was ludicrous, therefore it wasn't pleasant. I was curious when my aunt handed me the phone. After some little talk about my life, my parents said they were proud of my progress. They then said they wanted another go at parenthood. They asked me to stay in touch and move in after graduation. I was shocked, since I couldn't fathom them requesting this. I questioned them why they suddenly wanted me back. Then they told me my sister caused it. My sister is apparently even more of a difficult child than I was. which shames them. They wanted me to reconnect and show their friends and family they could raise wonderful kids. Reconnecting was about using me as proof that they were good parents, not about getting back together. I think people judge them. My sister is becoming a problem child like I was. They must demonstrate good parenting. It's absurd to want me back. Yet they expected me to consider it. I told them on the phone that I wouldn't return and wouldn't assist them prove anything to their friends and family. I told them I was done with them, and they were too. I already described how poorly I did with my parents and how much better my life was after moving in with my aunt. I feel they were the problem, not troubled children. They didn't raise me, so saying they did would be a lie. My aunt handled the job well. I wouldn't let them acknowledge her efforts. Most of our relatives and acquaintances knew my aunt cared for me. Despite that, my parents planned to lie and say they had maintained in touch with me and visited often. I told them I wouldn't help spread this untruth, and they were alone. They threw a tantrum, saying they had supported me and my aunt for 12 years. Instead, they delivered a monthly check that hardly covers anything. My aunt always paid the rest herself, but she never complained. Now they were trying to appear supportive with their limited efforts. They told me my sister had failed, which was humiliating, so I had to help them because they were my parents. I lost it then. I told them they were not my parents and no longer my family. I told them to leave me and my aunt alone because she was my only family. Update 1. Hello everybody. When I first posted 2 days ago, most of you agreed I'm NTA. I appreciate that since it helped me understand. The only reason I doubted myself was that my parents had tried everything to convince me that what I said was bad in the preceding week. They made it sound like I was intentionally harsh. Honestly, I didn't believe I said anything wrong. Not rude or impolite. After reading the comments, I knew they were trying to pressure me into agreeing to their requirements and returning home to show off their successful parenting. Despite blocking them, they keep contacting me from various accounts and phone numbers, which is bothersome. My aunt told me to disregard it. She stated there was no need to apologize if I was right. She also asked several family members why my parents were suddenly so eager to prove they were decent parents. That's when she learned what happened. I heard she smoked at my sister's 12th birthday party 2 weeks ago. When my parents tried to confiscate her cigarette, she threw a huge rage that caused my mom to cry. My mom's older sister, grandparents, and other relatives told her at the party that their 12-year-old daughter had a cigarette because of their parenting failure. They said my parents could have prevented this by being more proactive. My parents have spoiled my sister since childhood, I've learned. They never refused her, gave her a substantial allowance, and allowed her to do everything she wanted unsupervised. She knew she could get away with anything, so my 12-year-old sister ruled them. After the cigarette incident, many friends and family criticized them for raising her improperly. Due to their desire to prove themselves good parents, my parents want me back. To demonstrate their success, they want to display me as a prize. Their behavior is pitiful. Most importantly, they should realize this strategy won't work, because everyone knows my aunt reared me. Even my aunt's contacts disapproved of my parents' decision to send me away when I wasn't doing well. When your kids are struggling, you should help them, not ignore them. They had often advised my parents to bring me back after my sister's birth, so we could grow up together. My parents ignored it, stating I was better with my aunt, and they knew best. I don't understand how or if my parents can think of others. They could easily write off my sister while trying to gain me back by labeling her a failure. Her 12-year-old age terrifies me. I think counseling would be enough to get her back on track. I don't think my parents should guide me. This is the child they sent me away for, saying they wanted to save time, money, and energy for her. However, they have raised and treated her this way. They say they sacrificed their oldest kid for her, but I don't think they care about us. I don't think my parents were meant to be parents. I could easily resent my sister because she got everything I never did from our parents: love, care, affection, money, and time. Personally, I feel awful for her. All of that isn't enough to raise a child properly. I'm more surprised that my parents failed both of their children. I hope they quit calling and messaging me since I don't want to talk to them after what my aunt and other family members taught me. Next time they guilt trip me, I'll tell them. Update 2. I've remained silent for a few days, but if my folks tried to guilt me again, I'd tell them. They did. They called me from a new number 2 hours ago. I was told to apologize and return home as soon as I picked up. I was feeling sick today and moody. That phone call made matters worse, and I snapped. I shouted at them, saying I wouldn't apologize, since what I said was true. They were not my parents. They had done nothing to deserve that label. I'd call my aunt my family because she raised me. I informed them they hadn't seen me in 12 years. Before that, they ignored me. They should blame themselves if they can't accept my not seeing them as family. They should stop phoning me to make me feel awful about something I don't have to do. They interrupted me, saying that while my aunt reared me, they supported us and we shouldn't forget that. I said the money they sent barely met my expenses. My aunt paid for practically everything herself, so my parents' money was useless. If they had kept me, they wouldn't have had to pay child support. They should quit acting like providing money was a tremendous favor to my aunt. I informed them child support was the very least after sending their son to her. She kept this from the family out of love, even though she could have ruined their reputation. They should stop talking about their spending because money isn't everything. The incident at my sister's birthday celebration should have taught them that. They also threw money to their youngest daughter, who is now a spoiled brat. They called her a failure. But my parents failed. They failed us both. They reacted defensively when I said it. They said my sister was happy, and I didn't understand. They said her birthday party incident was one time. But I know happy kids, especially 12-year-olds, don't smoke because they can. Telling them they were probably attempting to convince themselves didn't mean I believe they were trying to raise my sister. They did the same mistakes with hers with me, but in reverse. They neglected me but spoiled her with money and too much attention. They didn't govern her correctly during their time with her. I knew this even though I'd never met the youngster. They needed to contact me to prove they were decent parents, showing how little they cared about their kids. They wanted to look like good parents, not be good parents. Perhaps this was too much truth for them. They yelled at me, cussed me, and said I had no idea what I was talking about. Their defensiveness and ranting validated my accuracy. We argued for a few more minutes, until they said they were glad they sent me away years ago. They said they were glad they selected their daughter, since I wasn't good enough to be their son. They hung up, perhaps fearing their goodbyes would hurt me. I didn't care. I was glad I won the dispute, because otherwise they wouldn't have resorted to such low blows. Now, I hope they think twice before fighting or calling me again. Only my inability to aid my sister bothers me. I feel bad because she might survive outside my parents' terrible atmosphere. But sometimes you win and lose. Third, update. A week has passed since I spoke to my folks. That last phone call was the last time they disturbed me, which is better for them. From what I know, they've been telling the family that my sister's cigarette event was one time and won't happen again. But nobody is duped. She may have more going on. This may have been her first cigarette. But who knows what else she's done. My parents were the only ones responsible. It was evident that their lack of monitoring and discipline caused this. I don't usually condemn someone without knowing them, but my parents deserve it. What kind of folks abandon one child while pregnant with another? Who? My parents. I'm delighted my family is now seeing how broken they are and keeping their distance. After years of silence, my aunt has begun to reveal why they left me with her. They didn't want me around because they wanted to spend more time with their other child. Not because I was a troublesome kid. My parents made me a problematic kid, not me. If I were to blame, I wouldn't have thrived after moving away. My aunt hid this for 12 years because she didn't want to destroy my parents' reputation. But now she thinks they deserve it. Due to their defensiveness, my parents are already feared. Denial regarding parenting failure is evident. Everyone now knows my parents are the culprits after hearing our story, that they abandoned me to my aunt. They don't deserve my sister or myself. Some may believe we're overreacting and don't need to kick them while they're down. But this wouldn't have happened if they hadn't called me to help them pretend to be wonderful parents. They deserve it. Update 4. Posting again after 2 weeks. Brings a huge update. Maternal grandparents are fighting for custody of my sister. My parents sent me to live with my aunt, but I have always maintained in touch with most of my family. I have a good relationship with my grandparents. So when they called a few days ago to ask about my parents, I told them. They were delighted. I finally told them about my parents' mistreatment. They believed my parents had a solid cause to send me away for years. Now they know no cause could justify putting your child away. They apologized for not discovering the truth sooner, and I said it was okay. Everyone struggles, and I didn't seem to be hurting. It would have been hard to know without being told. After the cigarette incident with my sister, my grandparents heard allegations about my treatment from other family members. My aunt finally told me how my parents abandoned me after leaving me off at her house. My grandparents decided to investigate after hearing this. They didn't want their younger granddaughter to experience what I did. After talking to me, they discovered my parents hadn't changed. They still cared more about appearing good parents than being there for their kids. That's when my grandparents fought for custody of my sister, to raise her differently. I agree with the choice. My life improved after I left my parents, and I'm sure hers will too. They've been given temporary custody, but my sister doesn't care. Her indifference makes me think she'll get over it. My grandparents believe they will obtain complete custody shortly, but they will allow my parents visits. My sister has started trying to get to know me, which is the finest part. Several days ago, we spoke on the phone. She appears glad to talk to me, and I heard that our parents told her not to talk to me for years because I was a bad influence. I hope we can create a good friendship now that she's coming around. Hopeful for the future. My sister stole my spotlight, trapped her boyfriend to have the first grandchild, and now expects me to raise her baby because she can't cope. In order to take my attention and have the first kid, my sister tricked her partner into getting pregnant. Now that she can't handle being a mother, she wants me to raise the child. After 6 years of dating, my longtime partner, Dexter, 29 million, and I, 28 million, were married last year. We met at a college function through common acquaintances. I was seeking a degree in business administration, and Dexter was studying engineering. Since the moment we clicked, we have been inseparable. To put things in perspective, I've always been competitive with my younger sister, Aria, 24F. She has attempted to do anything I did first or better since she was a young toddler. 3-year-old Aria hurled fits until our parents enrolled her in ballet courses when I was 7 years old. Even though she had never been interested in sports, she suddenly became interested in basketball when I joined the school team in the 8th grade. She insisted on taking lessons and putting in extra practice time when I started playing the piano at the age of 15 in order to surpass me at the yearly recital. Throughout high school and college, this trend persisted. Aria studied tirelessly till she received straight A's plus additional credit, while I received straight A's in my sophomore year. Aria put an endless effort to gain admission to an Ivy League university with a better scholarship after I got accepted to State University on a partial scholarship. Our parents supported her actions, viewing Aria as their ideal kid while frequently ignoring my accomplishments. While I had to work part-time jobs to help pay for my tuition, they spent thousands on her Ivy League education. After learning about my relationship with Dexter on social media, Aria began dating his younger brother Kenneth, 26 million, a few months later. Their connection appeared forced, and Kenneth was in his senior year of high school. But the fact that the girls were seeing brothers was cute in the eyes of our parents. Dexter and I developed a close bond throughout the years, helping one another through our early adult challenges, first jobs, and college. Our parents disapproved of our moving in together after graduation, calling it living in sin. Yet they praised Aria's decision to live with Kenneth immediately after high school graduation as romantic. My grandparents were ecstatic when Dexter and I announced our engagement last year, anticipating the arrival of their first great-grandchild. In addition, my grandma gave me her antique cradle, saying she hoped to fill it soon. Aria was upset about this and couldn't bear that I was getting attention for once. She tried to overshadow us multiple times as we were organizing our wedding. Kenneth wasn't prepared, but she persuaded him to pop the question. We vehemently objected to her suggestion of a double wedding. She even attempted to attend our wedding wearing white, but our grandmother objected. Aria revealed her pregnancy at a family Sunday dinner 2 months after our wedding. During the news, Kenneth appeared startled and uneasy, nearly dropping his fork as she spoke. Aria purposefully became pregnant without telling Kenneth, as we later learned from mutual friends. In order to have the first grandchild in the family, she had stopped taking birth control without telling him. My parents were thrilled to have grandchildren. They focused all of their attention on Aria's pregnancy and totally forgot about our recent wedding. Every family get-together turned into a discussion about her nursery or baby shower ideas. While my father began establishing a college fund for the child, my mother spent hours shopping for baby clothes. After being given to me, my grandmother's antique cradle was abruptly moved to Aria's apartment since she needed it more. During a brother's night out, Kenneth told Dexter that he wasn't prepared to become a father. He wanted to concentrate on his recently launched profession first. He didn't know how to communicate his feelings of being confined and exploited without coming across like a villain. By claiming that their child required both parents, Aria persuaded him to stay. She even said that they needed to start living as a family and moved in with him at his parents' house. After the baby was born, the real issues began. Aria soon came to the conclusion that having a child was about more than just attracting attention and posting adorable pictures to social media. Even the most basic things, like changing diapers or getting up for night feeds, were difficult for her. Despite his best efforts, Kenneth was similarly unprepared. Both of them began to exhibit symptoms of overwhelm. Kenneth began staying late at work to avoid going home, and Aria would phone her mother at 3 in the morning to vent about how difficult things was. My folks invited Dexter and me to supper last week. We were mistaken to believe that it was simply a typical family supper. The fact that they had also invited Dexter's parents ought to have raised our first suspicion. My mother began discussing how anxious Aria was with the baby as soon as we sat down. She talked on how the kid was making things hard for her, and how Arya needed time to figure out her life and job. She discussed how Arya needed a vacation, and how her mental health was deteriorating. The unexpected thing came next. My parents said that since Dexter and I were stable, grown up, and had been married for a longer period of time, we need to adopt the child and raise it as our own. According to them, Arya could concentrate on her life, and we wouldn't have to strive for our own child. I couldn't speak. Just because the real parents weren't prepared for the responsibilities they had consciously accepted, they were expecting us to look after someone else's child. We are currently under pressure from both of our families to change our minds. They constantly accuse us of being heartless for not assisting Arya when she is in need, but Dexter and I won't allow them to coerce us into accepting a duty that isn't ours. We never asked Arya to become pregnant, and we never asked her to utilize her pregnancy as a means of gaining attention. We're talking about a human being, not a car. Parenting proved to be more difficult than you anticipated. Therefore, you can't simply hand off your child. First update. Since my last post, things have become worse. My mother and Arya arrived at my place of employment yesterday during lunch. Somehow, the marketing company where I work in the city discovered my lunch routine. As I was making my way to my car to get lunch, they cornered me in the parking lot and made me listen to their suggestion. I could tell right away as they came up to me that this was no ordinary visit. Arya had black bags under her eyes and appeared to have not slept for days. She broke down in tears as she explained that she and Kenneth needed more time to work things out and that they weren't prepared for parenting. She insisted that parenthood was more difficult than she had anticipated, and that she felt overwhelmed and confined. Then my mom told me about their new strategy. They proposed a 6-month trial period for Dexter and me to take the baby. They would come up with another plan if things didn't work out. They said this would ensure the infant was well cared for and give Arya and Kenneth time to organize their lives. In the parking lot, they even took a temporary custody agreement they had written out of their pocketbook. Arya went into a frenzy when I declined once again. She cried out that I was destroying her life and that I would help her if I truly loved her. She said that I was being bitter and self-centered by refusing to merely punish her. As she created the scenario, several of my coworkers, who were also on their lunch break, paused to gaze. My mom tried something different. She mentioned that I had always desired children and that perhaps this was God's will, that I should raise Arya's child rather than mine. This might be our chance to become parents, she remarked, adding that blessings might occasionally come in unexpected ways. Her statement made me furious for its arrogance. Prior to calling security, I instructed them both to depart. They arrived at our house with Kenneth's parents at approximately 7 p.m. that evening. It's clear that they organized this ambush in the hopes of applying pressure on us if they banded together. Fortunately, Dexter was at home. He adamantly urged them to go when they resumed their emotional manipulation. They said they wouldn't go unless we complied with their demands. As though he had nothing to do with the predicament, Kenneth's mother began to weep at how her son's life was being destroyed. My mother added that Arya needed help since she was experiencing postpartum depression. They utterly ignored the availability of real medical and psychiatric assistance, making it seem as though taking their child was the only way to assist her. Arya then revealed the shocking information. She had already purchased tickets to Europe with Kenneth. Regardless of our consent, they intended to leave the baby with us. She reasoned that we would be forced to care for the infant if they simply abandoned it. We had no choice but to step up because she had an entire plan in place. They would drop the kid off for babysitting and then head off for their trip. Her selfishness astounded me, and I told her right away that I would contact CPS if she left her child behind. I told them that it was illegal to abandon a child, and that if they carried out their plan, I would not think twice about reporting them. They all felt shaken by this menace. My mother began pleading with us not to call the police, claiming that doing so would destroy Arya's life and future employment opportunities. Kenneth's parents came in, saying that if we agreed, they would raise Dexter's inheritance. They even offered to purchase us a new car and a larger house if we took the baby. But we refused. We threatened to call the police for trespassing if they didn't leave. They couldn't believe we wouldn't fall for their tricks, and their shocked expressions when they realized we were serious were almost humorous. Arya made one final attempt to guilt-trip me before she left. She reminded me of all the times I had expressed my desire to become a mother, how I had always cherished kids, and how this might be my only opportunity to become a mother. She also implied that I didn't truly want to be a mother because I had refused. I informed her that my desire to become a mother did not entail condoning her reckless actions. I told her that she was the one who made the decision to become pregnant, without giving it much thought, and that she now had to face the repercussions of her choice. My mother cautioned us that we would come to regret our choice before they eventually went. She accused us of choosing to be unkind instead, saying that family should support family. In his will, Kenneth's father made it a point to reiterate that this would have an impact on our status. Dexter and I sat down and talked for a while after they departed. We came to the conclusion that we had to take action to guard against ambushes in the future. We're considering installing security cameras in our house, and I've alerted the security at work to any possible undesirable guests. The entire affair has demonstrated to us the extent to which our family would go in order to impose their desires on us. They obviously don't respect our personal space or our freedom to choose. If they persist in their harassment, we may pursue legal action. Second update. I made the decision to speak with my grandfather following the ambush in our house and the parking lot incident. He has always been our family's sane voice, and I needed his viewpoint. Since my grandmother's bridge club normally meets on Wednesday afternoons, I waited until I was certain he would be by himself. I brought his favorite lemon cake from the local bakery when I paid him a visit at their home. He was reading the newspaper in his study when I got there, as he normally did after lunch. When he first saw me, he grinned, but as soon as he saw how upset I was, his face immediately became serious. I took a seat in the worn leather chair across from him, the same chair I had sat in as a kid when I came to see him after school. I told him everything right away, including Arya's willful pregnancy, her incapacity to cope with motherhood, and our parents' absurd insistence that we accept her child. I described the ambush at work and how they threatened to leave the baby with us in an attempt to coerce us into accepting it. I could see his face shift from worry to rage as I talked. He already knew some of the narrative, but not the complete truth, which surprised me. He had heard an entirely different story from my parents. They claimed that Arya was upset when Dexter and I abruptly changed our minds about adopting the baby after first offering to do so. Arya was shown as the victim of our brutality, and we were portrayed as the bad guys who refused to assist families in need. When grandfather learned the truth, he became enraged. He found it incomprehensible that my mother, his own daughter, would attempt to make her elder daughter raise her younger daughter's child. Arya's intention to leave the kid with us and flee to Europe particularly infuriated him. He muttered that this wasn't how he and grandmother had brought up their kids, as he continued to shake his head. Even though my grandmother was at her bridge club, he contacted her right away. This demonstrated how seriously he took the matter, as he rarely interferes with her social activities. He made me repeat everything to her when she got home 20 minutes later. Both of them were clearly distressed by the time I finished telling my story. This had gone too far, they both agreed. Grandfather claimed to have seen my parents continuously favor Arya throughout the years, but he had thought they would change their ways. He now understood that this mess was the result of parental partiality, which allowed Arya to act carelessly while expecting me to tidy up after her. Grandfather then made a surprising offer. Among his many holdings was a lovely property in a peaceful area approximately an hour's drive from our own residence. The current occupants had recently left the residence, which had been rented out for years. He said we needed to get away from this toxic circumstance and offered to give it to us. I tried to say no at first. It felt impossible to grasp that the house was worth at least $500,000. However, grandfather persisted. He claimed that he had intended to leave it to me in his will anyhow, and that granting it to us now would enable us to get out of this predicament. My grandma concurred with him. Creating physical distance is sometimes the only way to deal with toxic family dynamics, she said. When we were ready, the house would allow us to establish our own family without any influence from either set of parents, she added. The very next day, they had the documents prepared by their lawyer. Although we wouldn't want to, the house was transferred to our names with a stipulation that we couldn't sell it for at least 5 years. According to our grandfather, this requirement was put in place to stop our parents from attempting to coerce us into selling it and handing Arya the proceeds. Dexter was in disbelief when I informed him about my grandparents' offer when I came home that night. Although he and my grandparents had always been friendly, this degree of assistance was surprising. We spoke about the offer and its implications for us all night long. Longer commutes to work would result from moving an hour away, but the calm and distance seemed worth it. We chose to accept the kind offer from my grandparents. Before we could move in, the house needed a few small repairs, but grandfather offered to pay for those as well. He declared his desire for us to start over, away from the manipulation and drama we had been enduring. Third update. We moved into the house my grandfather gave us 3 months ago. Our sanity has been greatly preserved by the distance. We changed our phone numbers as soon as we moved, limiting the new ones to my grandparents and a select group of reliable pals. In case someone tried to show up without permission, we also established a full security system with cameras. Our home has turned into a haven. The first month was devoted to repainting and personalizing it. I transformed a spare room into a library, something I've long desired, and Dexter turned another into his home office. We can plant and unwind in the spacious backyard, away from the chaos we left behind. Kenneth and Arya never visited Europe. They were forced to act as parents when they realized we were serious about calling CPS. Their common acquaintances have informed us that they are finally enrolling in parenting classes and looking for childcare assistance. When Kenneth's parents realized we wouldn't change our minds, they ceased scaring us with the inheritance. Through our mutual connections, my mother continues to try to get in touch with us. She sends messages, claiming that we are severing the family and that going away is childish. She even attempted to contact me using my work email account, but fortunately, my employer respects employee privacy. She wrote to me last week via one of my relatives, saying that we were being cruel by not assisting Arya and that she was depressed as a result of our behavior. Although he hasn't tried to get in touch with us directly, my father has been telling everyone he can that we left the family when they most needed us. Although he is attempting to portray us as the antagonists in this tale, most people who are aware of the real facts will appreciate why we had to keep our distance. Throughout it all, my grandparents have been our staunchest allies. They have made it plain to everyone that they support our choice and frequently pay us a visit in our new house. My mother was even instructed by grandmother to refrain from contacting us until she could respect our limits. They got into a heated argument over this, but my grandma refused to back down. In the end, Dexter's parents expressed regret for attempting to control us by threatening to take our inheritance. They acknowledged in a letter that their attempt to coerce us into taking Arya's baby was incorrect. We're still keeping our distance, though. Months of coercion and pressure are not undone by a single apology. We've learned from the entire experience who genuinely cares about our welfare and who merely wants to utilize us to solve their problems. We've finally come to grips with our choice and are eager to begin a family of our own, on our own terms. We learned last week that Aria and Kenneth are finally going to parenting classes and couples counseling. We're happy that they're receiving assistance, but we don't intend to get in touch with them again anytime soon. It will take more than a few months of good behavior to restore the confidence that has been damaged. We're content with our quiet new life for the time being. In addition to joining a neighborhood community garden and making friends in our new neighborhood, we also intend to adopt a dog. Sometimes establishing enough distance to improve your personal happiness is the greatest approach to handle hurtful family relationships. We have no regrets about our choice, and that is precisely what we are doing. My fiance let his mom dictate our wedding, including asking me not to wear white. Here's how I took back control of my life. Original post. Have you ever seen I Love a Mama's Boy? Well, that's my life basically. I, 27F, have been with my fiancé, John, 28F, since high school. We dated and broke up because his mother, Debbie, 53F, convinced him we were too young to be in love. We broke up and went to college. During my sophomore year, we started talking on socials again. He apologized and said he missed me. We got back together. Cue the waterworks. Debbie literally cried the first time she saw we were back together and told John that I have done witchcraft on him. I've always respected Debbie out of respect for my mother and upbringing. I was not raised to go back and forth with my elders, but she definitely abuses that. Since John and I decided to get back together, she has tried to hook him up with women from her church, her job, and even asks her friends for their daughters to give it a shot. John denies all of them, and Debbie says that I'm controlling. John has told her to stop, but not in a way I feel she gets the point. Anyway, 3 months ago, John proposed. Deb didn't come to the engagement party. Cool. She didn't come to the family dinner we had, so both sides could meet. Cool. John's dad came and apologized for his ex's behavior. He left her when John graduated high school. I told him don't worry about it. The problems really began when John decided to confront his mother about how she's behaving toward our whole engagement. This turned on the light bulb in his brain, as he's always tried to ignore it, and tell me to ignore her. She gave him a sob story about how she got pregnant with him before marriage and never really got to have a wedding, and this is triggering her. She had a shotgun wedding at the courthouse. He asked her what she needed to feel comfortable, and she responded that if she wore white and I wore a soft pink or lavender, she would feel comfortable. My fiancé, for some reason, thought this was a fair compromise. He also said, not asked, that his mom could walk me down the aisle so she can get her moment in her dress. I told him absolutely not, and we got into an argument about it. I told him that it's insane that he would argue with me to defend his mom's honor, but wouldn't do the same the other way around. He accused me of being petty and selfish. It was bad. We both have agreed to cool off, but by how heated it got, I could tell we both almost agreed to call it off. Now we're in a weird space, and I love John, but now see how much he lets her impact our life. I just imagine her sitting at home with this evil grin, knowing she's ruining my relationship with John, and he's just putty in her hands. I think I should just call off the wedding. AIO. Or is it just a color? Top comments. Ducky's mom. This isn't about a dress color. It's about control and possibly a dash of humiliation. Do you really want to put down roots, start a family, with a man willing to bend backwards for his mommy to the point of telling his bride she can't wear white, but his mom gets the glory? I shudder to think what having kids with this man would look like. Hallucinogenic. He can marry his mother in her white dress then. What an absolutely unhinged request. Any self-respecting man would be appalled to even bring this to his intended bride. Anon. 4665444. You're not overreacting. But do you want a husband who will prioritize his mother's feelings over yours? Because this will not change after you get married. This is him showing you his priorities. Update 1. Hey, everyone. Not sure if this is the update everyone wanted, but this is what happened since my last post. I laid out a couple of talking points that I couldn't articulate over the rage. I met up with John after work at home. I was at the gym, letting off steam. We spoke on everything and made plans to speak to his mother. John came home remorseful. He told me he was anxious about it and brought it up to a coworker and friend about how I don't want to compromise. Apparently his friend, God bless his soul, went off on him about him being cringy. This angered me. So when I say, it's a problem but another man tells you, and now you see the other side, I brought up my talking points, him being easily manipulated. This was also proved when I said he would listen to whatever another man said before his partner. Even though his friend agreed with me, it hurt that he didn't listen to me. His mom went out of her way to break us up with this silly request. He was way more open to this theory, now knowing how cringe he looks, even telling this situation to someone else. I compared it to a father removing a bride's wedding garter. He got the point. He agreed to his mom's crazy request before even talking to me. He claimed he didn't. He told her, he'll see how I feel about it, and just brought it up to me. I asked why he did not see that his mother walking down the aisle on his wedding day was extremely creepy. He said it's just a dress in his eyes. He just didn't want his mom to miss the wedding. I told him there will be no wedding if he doesn't straighten up. He said he understood, me showing him how blatantly obvious it was that she hates me. She didn't even ask to wear white alongside me, which is still weird. But that I don't wear white at all, as if I'm some impure whore. Thanks, Reddit, because I wasn't even thinking of that one. He said he didn't see it that way. He just knew she hadn't been showing up, because she said, seeing me in white hurts her. So I said, do you not hear your own mom saying she wants to be the bride herself? That she can't stand it being me? It finally looked like a ding went off in his head. Me asking him what role would she play in our wedding, childbirth, Mother's Day, and everything to come. Would I always come second place? He assured me I wouldn't, and he realizes how bad he fucked up. He was just trying to keep the peace, I asked, by always making her happy and making me miserable. I refused to live my life this way. He agreed and said he was sorry and that he wouldn't want me to be miserable. We have no children yet, but we created a plan and how to deal with any big milestone. She won't be there for anything unless I'm comfortable with it. And I won't be unless she does a 180. I asked what his mom said to change his mind, and you all guessed it. She cried. She cried about how her baby was getting taken away from her. How she never got her wedding. How his dad left her and she was alone and had no one else. That she felt sick and just wanted to experience a real wedding before she dies. She is perfectly healthy unless there's something she hasn't told us. Yo just told him. If that was enough to manipulate him, what's to say he won't turn on me again? He said his friend and dad talked sense into him about how he was going to lose me. I told him today was the last straw for me. He had to do 4 things to keep me engaged to him if he even cared to. Go LC with his mom and do not let her make any decisions on our wedding, which will be postponed another year to see if he actually sticks to his word. He has to go to counseling, individual and couples counseling. He has to speak to his mom with me present about her behavior toward me, because every time he goes by himself, he comes back with a reason why he left it alone. He must create strong boundaries and learn to uphold them. He agreed. Then came the bad part. I showed him the post. I felt so bad as he read everyone rip him to shreds in the comments. I could see how uncomfortable he was as he read how much of a mama's boy he was and other things about his mom. He was hurt that I agreed that I should leave in some comments. He read for a few minutes until he saw someone call him a spineless you next Tuesday, and then gave my phone back. He said it was really harsh, but I had to show him how crazy the situation sounded, even if it was just to keep the peace on a surface level. Him reading the post was icing on the cake. He said he saw everyone telling me to leave, and his heart physically started hurting, knowing that he deserved it. We called his dad, who I'm no longer calling future FIL, because I will call this wedding off tomorrow if he doesn't have my back when we speak to his mom. John's dad Dan, who I'll name since he's a big part of this update. Dan also read John the riot act again. He was relieved John decided to get his act together. We agreed to go to Deb's house tomorrow with Dan and John's aunt. My dad is tagging along. John has said he will tell his mother that she can't under any circumstances make our wedding about her. He also said if she does cry or try to guilt trip him, he will tell her he's going nuh. I feel terrible, as getting a man to stop talking to his mother isn't something I ever thought I even wanted. I doubt Debbie will come around, especially not tomorrow with all of us against her. I don't know if John will backtrack as soon as he gets there. I have explained if he doesn't grow a spine, I'm leaving. He either can marry me or marry his mom. But that's my ultimatum. He said he chooses me. We'll see, I guess. This all should make me happy, but I still feel icky. I'll update tomorrow after we all talk to Debbie. Update 2. Hey everyone. I'm back with the last update. This is a bit long, so buckle up. Some people reach to disrespect me. I honestly don't care if you don't believe my story or find me annoying, but messaging me, calling me names, being disrespectful, and or saying I shouldn't wear white to my own wedding is classless. I won't respond, and I genuinely hope you all get the help you need for whatever trauma makes you that much of an angry person. To all the people who have reached out with positive vibes and advice, thank you so much, you cutie patooties. Anyway, John and I met up after work, and we headed to pick up Dan. John's aunt couldn't make it. My dad was meeting us there. I had really bad anxiety. I told Dan and Dad they should give us a few before knocking so she doesn't feel ambushed. They agreed. Here's the part everyone was waiting for. We get to Debbie's. My heart feels like I'm going up the world's tallest roller coaster slowly. John is quiet. We get there and he gives her a firm but respectful, "Hey, Mom." We sit down and John tells her we came to talk to her. She asked what's wrong. John got right into it. He bluntly said to her that her actions toward me for years have been petty. Her not showing up for any of our wedding events was unacceptable to him. He flat out asked her why she has a problem with me. I genuinely thought he was going to start with the dress situation. He went for the root of it all. Debbie acted like she had no idea what he was talking about. She has actively tried to get him to cheat, leave me for other women, but in that moment was shocked and doesn't know where this was coming from. She said she has no problems with me and loves me like a daughter. She looked at me like she expected me to talk, but like I said to you all, I wanted to see what John had to say. He asked her to be honest and named all the times he's recalled that she insulted me to my face and behind my back. He mentioned she has also tells him he could do better every time I'm not around. This was news to me, but am I shocked? No. Deb was livid. She genuinely couldn't believe he outed her like that. She starts going off on him, calling him disrespectful, and saying he was disrespecting his own mother for an outsider. She kept saying, "I know she made you do this. I know she's the one making you disrespect me like this." John was trying to reason with her and get her to calm down. I text Dan and my dad to come in. Once they were inside, Deb became a different person. She was startled as she wasn't expecting them, and then all of the things she was just saying went out of the window. She turned to Dan and my dad and said John walked in and just started yelling at her because of me. My dad looked at me and I shook my head no. Once Dan and Dad got in, everything was calmer for a little while. She went back to denying she didn't like me. They all told her that it was obvious, that the dress request was shameful of her. She immediately replied, "It's shameful that I won't let her son spend time with her." John said, "That's not true." At this point, I'm burning inside. I wanted to correct all of her inaccuracies, but I stood quiet. John asked her, "What's the real issue with?" "Oh, Dad." Deb starts saying how she knew I was going to be an issue since we were in S. She said that once John got with me, his grades started dropping, which isn't true. That he stopped making time for family. Also not true. That he once didn't show up to celebrate Mother's Day with her a few times because of my birthday. My birthday is in April, Mother's Day is in May. That once we got back together, he forgot about her completely because I made him abandon her. He goes to her house at least 3 times a week. She said the fact that we had the engagement party without checking how she felt about it was wrong, and all the evidence she needed to see what kind of woman I am. My dad pointed out that she didn't pay for the engagement dinner to have any input on it. Dan asked her, what was she thinking of, asking to wear white at our wedding? Why is she so hungry for attention? Her face got red and she went off. She told Dan maybe if he would have properly married her and gave her a real wedding, she wouldn't feel left out. Dan straight up called bullshit and said that she didn't want to have a real wedding, even though he tried to convince her. The reason being that her mother told her pregnant brides are tacky. She started crying. I honestly felt bad for Debbie here. Mothers, be nice to your daughters, or you'll create Debbies. My dad got everyone to calm down. John finally spoke again and told his mom that he can't keep defending her when she won't even try to respect me. That for his sanity and our relationship, he's going see. Deb kept crying and said that John can't leave her for dead. She's the only mother he'll ever have. Mothers are forever. Wives are not. I'm not even his wife yet, and I'm already tearing apart the family. He kept going. He told her that we are going to get married. She can't respect me or stop crossing boundaries. She'll get cut off completely. That his visits are dropping down to 1 every 2 weeks, and that she needs to call less. She started going off. She knew it. I'm doing something for him. What did I do to her son? I'm a manipulator and a problem. She told my dad. He raised a demon. My dad shot back at her to watch her mouth. John kept shouting, "Mom, stop. Mom, stop." But she kept screaming, and then she started hyperventilating. Whoever called it, you might be able to see the future. She was gripping John's arm saying, "She can't breathe." This was when I said to myself, oh no, he's about to flip-flop. He looked at me, and I knew he knew what I was thinking. John got her a cup of water, then asked his dad if he could make sure his mom was okay, and asked my dad to take Dan home. Dan and Dad agreed, and his mom started crying louder. She literally screamed, "I can't breathe," as we walked out so he could hear her. I felt fucking terrible, and I finally spoke. I told John I'm sorry, and I understand if he felt bad. He said he knew she was faking it, but his instincts wanted to run over and make sure she was okay. I asked, "Are you?" He said no, but he looked really sad about it. My dad walked out behind us. My dad has never seen this side of Deb. Neither have I. She's always been catty or shady toward me, but this was insane. My dad straight up told John that his mom needed help with her mental health. John said he's going to talk to his aunt about getting her help. We went home and John cried. He said he cried because he watched his mom villainize him and tell others that he just walked in and verbally abused her. He said it reminded him of the times he would fight with his dad because his mom would say Dan would just come from work and yell at her for no reason. I guess it was déjà vu for him. He was silent after she said that, so I do believe it struck a nerve with him. He decided to go and see for now. I did ask him if he was okay with me posting this part, and he said yes. Before we went to Deb's house, I called a couple of counselors in our area to check availability, and our first couples therapy session is next month. It's a little while away. He called his provider today to check for a therapist within his insurance and got an appointment for himself for the 23rd. The ball is rolling, and John seems like he's on the same page as me. I know this is killing him though. Dan called us and let us know he got Deb to calm down. He said he spoke to her as best as he could about her harming her own relationship with John, but she didn't want to hear it. Thank you, Reddit. I really didn't expect this to blow up like this. The advice and well wishes I got from this was so overwhelming, in a great way. While I should be happy, something about it all just makes me feel down. I hope that Debbie gets better and we can one day have her in our lives. Something about that comment about her mother made me hurt for little Debbie. Hopefully, one day I'll get to hear her stories. Now I'm going back to my regular life, and hopefully, I won't ever have a dramatic update for you guys, ever again.